in 2025, we're back to the IMF. One will ask, implementation is a major challenge. This time around, even though the president has given his word, we've heard people give their words in previous times as well. How are you going to push for this to go through?
Well, I think there is the plan is to publish whatever has been agreed upon, so that it provides space for transparency and it provides space for accountability. So when the issues are being addressed, all of us know that they are being addressed.
Right.
And then there is that idea that periodically we need to be briefed on what has happened so far after the dialogue.
Yeah.
So that's the different dimension that we are going to see as a result of this dialogue.
Right. Do we have the nitty-gritties in implementation plan? A step-by-step process that will see this through?
Of course, it is when recommendations are given that you move to implementation. So we cannot be talking about implementation plan now. But I'm very clear in my mind that those low-hanging areas that will go into the budget will start implementation this fiscal year.
Right. Who are some of the key stakeholders we'll be seeing, giving submissions in this forum?
Well, we will see Dr. Paul Aqua chairing the Restoring Macroeconomic Stability, and we will see Mr.
And you heard that, Professor Agachi, but right about now we move over to the Accra International Conference Center for the forum, which is currently underway.
It is my greatest pleasure and a singular honor to have the opportunity to chair today's National Economic Dialogue 2025 and to welcome all of you, our distinguished guests, especially His Excellency the President, to the opening session of the two-day event. The theme for the National Economic Dialogue 2025 is resetting Ghana, building the economy we want together. A bold and audacious vision by His Excellency the President to change the course of Ghana's destiny. Our experience in the 68 years of our political independence has not been spectacular, and the time has come to make a fresh start. When the President asked me to chair this dialogue, I agreed without hesitation, because I felt the same way as His Excellency, that Ghana indeed needs its destiny to be urgently reset. Your Excellency, on March 6, 1957, 68 years ago, when I first entered secondary school, the Gold Coast became an independent sovereign state called Ghana. And when Osajbo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah declared that our beloved country, Ghana, is free forever, he genuinely and passionately believed it. In his brief years of leadership of this country, he demonstrated clearly that he had come to reset Ghana's destiny. His purpose was not just to liberate Ghana politically from colonial domination and exploitation, but to build a self-confident country capable of managing its own affairs politically and economically for the benefit of all its citizens. In his statement of purpose, Dr. Nkrumah declared his selfless ambition to reset Ghana on a completely new economic model, to establish in Ghana a strong and progressive society in which no one, repeat, no one will have any anxiety about the basic needs of life, about work, about food and shelter, where poverty and illiteracy no longer exist, disease is brought under control, and where our educational facilities provide all the children of Ghana with the best possible opportunity for the development of their potentials. That was Nkrumah's Ghanaian dream. And he executed this vision with passion, backed by clear and credible actions and a selfless devotion to reach that agenda. The transformation of Ghana was dazzling. Close to 400 vertically integrated agricultural and manufacturing ventures were established in Ghana, with over 40% in rural Ghana. Well-paying jobs were abundant. Unemployment was not known. Graduates left university with jobs waiting for them, and workers happily sang "Work and Happiness" every day at noontime. Sadly, Your Excellency, this period, which I describe as the golden age of Ghana, came to an abrupt end when Nkrumah was overthrown on 24 February 1966, and with that, the Ghana dream died and has since remained a mirage. This is not to suggest, Your Excellency, that the Nkrumah administration was done without its flaws and excesses, but the indisputable fact is that our First Republic still remains the best and only example of real economic transformation from a colonial economy, selfless leadership, and the best example of inclusive growth and development. Today, as we prepare to celebrate 2 days from now, the 68th anniversary of our political independence, Ghana remains under economic domination and servitude, and a poor, highly and unsustainably indebted country. Unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, has become widespread and a security risk, while Ghana is the only country in sub-Saharan Africa that depends most on food imports to feed its people. Our manufacturing sector has collapsed, while hardship is pervasive. And we know why we are where we are today, Your Excellency, and the question. Today, Ghana is characterized by a political mindset motivated by power to loot state coffers for personal gain, selfishness, arrogance, and impunity by political leaders and public officers. A party-captured political system where the party in opposition chooses to sit on the fence and does everything, even including mislead the people to undermine genuine effort to develop the country. There is no longer love for country. Economic mismanagement, macro instabilities, and macroeconomic impediments to economic transformation. Pervasive institutionalized corruption, brazen greed and graft. Poor governance driven by weak, compromised state institutions. Maximum government with minimum governance. Broken, inefficient, ineffective, and expensive economic and social infrastructure. Failed agricultural policies culminating in overdependence on food imports. Exporters of commodities after 68 years of independence, and an over-reliance on imports of value-added products. A weak and compromised private sector frustrated by the public sector to promote and facilitate corruption. And a large number of state-owned enterprises who churn out losses upon losses every year, destroying the country's productive assets, accumulating debt, destabilizing fiscal performance of the budget, and which, above all, have also become a major source of corruption. Additionally, Your Excellency, we have succeeded in creating a new generation of young people called Generation Hustlers, who have lost hope, respect, and confidence in their political leaders and their country, and just want to leave Ghana behind them and relocate to foreign land. A very sad spectacle of our once highly revered country. Your Excellency, this is definitely not the Ghana that our forefathers fought for, and definitely not the Ghana that succeeding generations have toiled and hoped for. Your Excellency, someone must reset the destiny of Ghana, and it can only be you. Everywhere in the world, that the economic transformation has taken place, only one individual has led the charge. And the Lord has blessed you with the wisdom to take on that task. The task to liberate Ghana from economic mismanagement and corruption, to reset Ghana and put it on a path of sustainable and resilient growth, inclusive development and prosperity for all the citizens of the country. Ghanaians, Your Excellency, are tired of poverty and hardship. I must admit, Your Excellency and distinguished guests, that in the last 68 years of independence, Ghana has also suffered severe disruptions and dislocations from external shocks, including the COVID-19 pandemic and major supply chain disruptions following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and now the great disruption originating from the current US administration. We cannot ignore them. But the stark truth is that the overwhelming majority of our problems are homegrown and self-inflicted. Only our leaders and the people of Ghana can and must resolve these problems. Let us take the responsibility of resetting our destiny in our own hands. Your Excellency, the journey to reset Ghana is not going to be easy. It is going to be rough and full of risks and frustrations from within and from outside. However, with the determined leadership that you have promised and ownership from you, you shall succeed. Besides, there are many Ghanaians who are ready to stand with you and to work with you to deliver your bold vision. Like supporters of a well-known football club not to be named, you will never walk alone. This National Economic Dialogue, which you aptly set up as part of a 120-day social contract with the Ghanaian people, among its other objectives is to set in motion a process of dialogue and consultation on Ghana's present economic development challenges, discuss policy trade-offs, and build consensus around policy reforms that are needed to make Ghana a high, inclusive, and resilient growth economy. It is also intended that the National Economic Dialogue could be structured into a permanent consultative machinery in which the authorities, the private sector, civil society, and international partners regularly discuss socioeconomic and growth challenges, emerging opportunities, and risks. Your Excellency, the institutionalization of this process to advance your research agenda will be key to success. There are some who have already concluded that this is also going to be yet another talk show, and that there will be no follow-through actions. Hence, the commitment to institutionalize the dialogue should be prioritized to take away these doubts. After this plenary session, there shall be 6 breakout sessions which shall take critical look at 6 of the most pressing issues facing Ghana. And by the close of tomorrow, the dialogue will present concrete proposals to assist government with the execution of the reset agenda in order to reshape the future of our country's destiny. Your Excellency, permit me to reiterate that the task of resetting Ghana cannot be delayed. There is no option. We delay it at our own peril. As Brutus says in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, there is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in the miseries. That time is now, and the opportunity is here. Failure to act cannot be an option. This bold vision to reset Ghana should rewrite the history of Ghana and Africa and give the future generations to come a lasting hope in our country and in our continent. Finally, Your Excellency, allow me once again to welcome you and the Vice President and all our distinguished invited guests to the 2025 National Economic Dialogue in Accra. I thank you for your attention.
I guess the spontaneity of the applause shows the quality of the work. Let's do it one more time. And Mr. Chair did not work alone. He had a 7-member committee that worked with him. So now that I have the President's attention, let me acknowledge the members of his committee. Dr. K.Y. Amoako, founding president of AICC, was also on the committee that worked with Dr. Yamson. Let's acknowledge Dr. K.Y. Amoako. And the rest of the committee, Nelly Miriku, Professor Gachi, Anthony Sapong, Mohammed Samara, Ernest Digraft Ejir, and Chairman of NDBC, Dr. Nimoy Thompson. Let's put our hands together for all of them. To demonstrate the truly national nature of this event, I'd like to acknowledge a few more groups. We'd like to specially welcome and acknowledge the Council of State, led by their chair, the Right Honorable Edward Kobido Ajaho, and the newly minted members of the Council of State. If they can arise so we see them. Thank you very much, Excellencies, for your interest in national development. Mr. President, almost all your ministers are here. There's also a strong delegation from Parliament. We want to acknowledge all the ministers and MPs who are here. Let's put our hands together for all of them. Thank you. We have captains of industry from the private sector, too many to mention. If you're a captain of industry, give us a wave so we acknowledge you properly. Thank you very much indeed. We also have civil society here as well. So civil society leaders, please rise so we acknowledge you. This is a very important part of the discourse. Thank you. As earlier hinted, our traditional authorities are here, and they are here in their numbers. We acknowledge our Togbewu Mamao Nime Name for your continued support. Let's put our hands together for all our revered traditional leaders. This is not an exhaustive list. We'll do the rest as we proceed. We'd like to now do a bit of history. It is often said that those who do not learn history are bound to repeat it. So I'd like to now invite a member of the committee who is also a former head of the Economic Commission for Africa and the founder and president emeritus of the Africa Center for Economic Transformation to draw lessons from Ghana's political economic history to set the stage for the future we want. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to give to you Dr. K.Y. Amoako. Please put your hands together for him. As I said, Nelson Mandela said it's a long walk to freedom. So it's a very long walk. If we can just support with a longer applause. Thank you, KY, for your hard work for Ghana.
Your Excellency, the President of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, Your Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Ofuku-Agyeman, members of the Planning Committee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, all protocols observed. It is my great pleasure and honor to be with you today to help set the scene for our National Economic Dialogue. As many of you know, I have spent my entire career, more than 50 years, in African development. I've had the honor and privilege of working closely with policymakers and leaders across the continent. I'm a proud Pan-Africanist, but first and foremost, I'm a proud Ghanaian. I was 13 years at the time of independence. I grew up with Ghana and have lived through our post-colonial journey, the ups and downs, our successes and failures. My assignment today is to reflect on Ghana's political economy since independence and draw key lessons from our journey to help us forge the road ahead. I'm grateful for the opportunity and hopeful that what we learn over the next 2 days would allow us as citizens, with you at the helm, Your Excellency the President, to truly create the Ghana we want. Nearly 20 years ago, I had the privilege of delivering 3 speeches in the R.P. Balfour Memorial Lecture Series at Kean University, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. During the first speech, I laid out a vision for a transformed Ghana, a Ghana that by 2030 would march where Malaysia stood in 2005. This meant a 10-fold increase in per capita income, a rise in life expectancy from 57 to 73 years, and a future where 9 out of 10 Class 1 pupils will reach Class 5 instead of 2 out of 3. A Ghana where higher education flourished, with 40% of students going to Kean University and similar institutions to study science, math, and engineering, contributing to the world's stock of scientific knowledge and becoming research and managers of our economy. A Ghana where close linkages between government, firms, universities, and other vocational institutes will ensure that the skills students acquire will be more relevant to the current and future demands in the labor market, allowing unemployment rates to fall to just 3% from the estimate of about 20% at the time. I and many of you here have echoed similar visions for decades, a vision that has not yet to be realized. I recently read the World Bank's World Development Report on the middle income trap. The report presents a sobering analysis of the challenges confronting nations like ours. It found out that while many countries have progressed from low income to middle income status since 1990, a staggering 108 nations, including Ghana, are stuck in lower middle income category, struggling to break through to higher income status. We may feel a bit of relief in knowing that we are not alone in the struggle to innovate, industrialize, and integrate into global value chains. But we must break this cycle. Ghana's gross national income per capita sat stagnant at less than $400 for almost 40 years. Between 1962 and 1999, but since 2000, it has increased to about $2,400. This begs the question, why have we stalled? And how can we make today's effort count, recognizing that economic transformation takes decades, not years? But it should not take another 50 years for Ghana to become an upper middle income country. And I hope that President Mahama's research will include raising our ambition. We can and must become a growth economy in the next 20 years. It is my firm belief that success hinges on presence, visionary leadership, policy continuity and consistency, and a shared responsibility between citizens and their government. Our leaders must possess the vision, skill, and determination to turn political aspirations into economic growth, inclusive prosperity, and lasting human well-being. As we just said, Kwame Nkrumah embodied all these characteristics. We will do well to learn from his unparalleled record of leadership and vision as we face similar challenges today. On Nkrumah's leadership, Aicc, of blessed memory, a friend and mentor to many of us in this room today, and one of our country's longest-serving finance ministers, once reflected that Nkrumah's imprint remains everywhere, in the macroeconomic and real sectors of Ghana's economy, in the banking and insurance industry, and in the country's basic infrastructure. Nkrumah believed in bold, transformative projects, and nothing exemplified this more than the Volta River project. It was the centerpiece of his strategy to industrialize Ghana's economy, providing the energy needed to boost factories, boost industry, and accelerate economic transformation. To me, Kwame Nkrumah was ahead of his time, and the inspiration he engendered and the vision he set forth were unmatched in African history. On January 22nd, on January 2022, 1996, Nkrumah inaugurated the Volta River massive Akosombo Dam, calling it his greatest dream. 1 month later, he was posed in a military coup. It may not be fortuitous that this national economic dialogue is taking place on days sandwiched tightly between that of Nkrumah's overthrow and our independence anniversary a few days from today. Kwame Nkrumah's spirit clearly is with us here today. In any case, what followed Nkrumah's overthrow was 15 years of political instability and economic mismanagement, marked by a destructive cycle of coups. When Jerry Rawlings' military regime took over in 1981, Ghana was in a crisis. To his credit, Rawlings stabilized the government after a couple of years, and before long, the economy started to recover. In his address to the opening of the third session of Parliament in 1985, Rawlings presented the first step of Ghana Vision 2020, a framework, quote, to realize the long-term vision of raising Ghana to the ranks of the middle-income countries of the world. At the time, the policy reforms pursued by the government were beginning to stabilize the economy. However, Ghanaians demanding a return to civilian rule rightfully pushed back against the authoritarianism and human rights abuses of the military regime. In response, Rawlings agreed to hold democratic elections in 1992, ushering in Ghana's Fourth Republic. But Rawlings remained skeptical. He feared that economic gains and stability could be compromised by premature democratization, but ultimately had little choice. The move to multi-party democracy system in 1992 split and crystallized our political landscape into two dominant political parties, the National Democratic Congress, or the NDC, and the new Patriotic Party, the NPP. This is where long-term, collectively held vision for Ghana's future began to unravel, and where policy continuity and consistency started to fade. The two parties have traded off the presidency and power with regularity, with the latest transition taking place just 2 months ago. These transfers have been peaceful, earning Ghana the reputation of a beacon of democracy in Africa and increasingly in the world. But our frequent transfers of power, no matter how peaceful, are not anchored in the long-term and widely shared vision for our economic transformation. Rather, they have come with interruptions in policy direction and programs, fragmented development efforts, wasted money, and a lack of sustained economic momentum. Intense political polarization has pushed us further and further apart when progress depends on working closer together. This brings me to the third necessary element for our future success, a shared responsibility between citizens and their government. I applaud President John Mahama's vision of resetting Ghana for jobs, accountability, and prosperity as a bold framework to help propel us forward. The next 4 years present a crucial window to lay a strong foundation for the Ghana we want in 2050. The 120-day social contract that President Mahama has laid before us identifies many concrete actions that will help us move forward towards our goals. But a contract can only exist between two or more people or two or more parties. Neither the government nor the people can achieve our vision for a transformed Ghana alone. We as Ghanaian citizens have a responsibility to take up the mantle of accountability and progress if we want to see lasting change. And based on my experience, I must admit, I'm concerned, but I'm also hopeful. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, 3 years ago, under my leadership, the African Center for Economic Transformation, in collaboration with Ghana's leading think tanks, policy institutes, and civil society organizations, launched the Compass for Ghana's Political and Economic Transformation, commonly known as the Ghana Compact. Our goal is clear: to identify the structural barriers hindering Ghana's transformation and to define the future we, as Ghanaians, aspire to by 2050. This effort is rooted in a fundamental democratic principle: ultimate power lies with the people. Ghana's transformation depends on its citizens setting a bold vision for the nation and holding governments accountable and themselves accountable for delivering on that vision. The Compact addressed some of our most pressing policy issues. There are 7 core thematic areas: national development planning, fiscal responsibility, youth education and skills, gender equality, private sector development, health, and climate change. The Compact is built on analysis from Ghana's leading minds and institutions. It is informed by consultation with all major political parties, traditional and religious leaders, and the cross-section of Ghanaian visionaries. And it fully reflects engagement with citizens across 10 regions of our country to ensure these recommendations are grounded in the daily realities of Ghanaians of all backgrounds. All this effort culminated in the Citizens' Convention in June 2024 at the University of Ghana. It brought together 500 people representing the various stakeholders associated with the Ghana Compact. We convened to create a citizen declaration of a social contract with the government of Ghana, or the expectation to guide governance in our country as we approach the 100th year of our independence in 2057. For each of the 7 thematic areas of the Compact that I mentioned, a set of targets and key actions to achieve them by 2030 was also identified. The Convention agreed that a robust accountability mechanism must underpin such a transformation agenda, not merely a monitoring tool, but a fundamental framework designed to ensure that the commitments enshrined in the social contract are realized. Such a mechanism will be a way to track, evaluate, and ensure that the fulfillment of these commitments will foster a stronger democratic process, enhance transparency, and rebuild trust between the government and its citizens. Importantly, the Compact emphasized the obligations of all of us as citizens in moving towards a transformed Ghana, underpinned by values such as patriotism, loyalty, honesty, and integrity, as well as civic education that starts early and is adequately funded. At the heart of this, to me, is a shift in our mindset to embrace the African personality that Kwame Nkrumah dreamt of more than 40 years ago when he said, "Africa needs new type of citizen, a dedicated, modest, honest, informed man, a man who submerges himself in the service of nation and mankind, a man who abhors greed and detests vanity, a new type of man whose humility is his strength and whose integrity is his greatest. I'm sure that if Kwame Nkrumah were with us here today, he would be saddened to see how far we have strayed from this vision. I share his disappointment, but I also know that we can turn this around. And please allow me to add that I'm grateful to everyone who has engaged in the compact process thus far, allowing us to bring concrete citizen-driven solutions to our administration to complement its swift efforts to correct the course we are in. And of course, we will continue our partnership, particularly with the National Demand Planning Commission under the leadership of the veteran Neil Moore Thompson. Excellencies, I have shared where we have come from, and with the rest of my time today, I would like to look forward, taking lessons from our history and from the Ghana Compact process to help inform what we do next. I will start by highlighting 4 critical areas where the Ghana Compact in the coming months can help take forward the recommendations from this national economic dialogue and support the goals and objectives of President Mahama's reset agenda. First is on governance. We need a code of good governance to enhance transparency and accountability in government operations, particularly in procurement and auditing, while fostering active citizen engagement in governance process. The second is on campaign and political party financing. The increasing monetization of our politics has driven incidents of party capture and pervasive corruption, as well as cronyism, leading to poor service delivery and accountability. This is the elephant in the room that we seldom see or talk about at meetings such as the one we are having here today and tomorrow. The third is the fight against galamsey. Today, 60% of our major water bodies are polluted, the most visible consequence of galamsey or illegal mining. But the environmental catastrophe runs deeper than polluted rivers. A 2022 report by the Center for Democratic Development named illegal mining as one of the primary sources of illicit funding for election campaigns and political party financing. And the fourth is the overarching goal of transformation. If we are to reach a middle income status in 20 years or less, we must grow our economy into a highly diversified one that is competitive in the export market, is highly productive in the use of labor and capital, and deploys enhanced technology towards improved well-being of our people. In about 6 months, the Ghana Compact will convene the second Citizens Convention to assess the progress we are making. We also review a public online dashboard to be created in collaboration with the NDPC that will track development progress, including social contract commitments and later government action over the long term, extending beyond this government to future administration. So let me offer the Compact as a platform for engagement between policymakers and citizens going forward. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before I yield the floor to the Finance Minister, I must raise one final forward-looking issue that I am sure is on the minds of President Mahama and Honorable Atta-Forson: how to sustainably finance our transformation. We find ourselves in repeated budgetary and debt crisis, agreeing to trade-offs that have eroded our middle class and put our most vulnerable citizens even more at risk. As we approach the conclusion of our 17th IMF bailout early next year, the fundamental question remains, will this be the last, or are we simply paving the way for an 18th bailout or a 19th? Remember, Ghana has had IMF programs for 40 of its 68 years since independence. Therefore, going forward, we must think and act differently about the mix of external financing and domestic resources that are so critical to our development. Let me illustrate with an example. The total amount of $1.7 billion programmed as support from the World Bank and the IMF this year is less than what we spent to subsidize our long-failing electricity sector. It is a staggering comparison. Still, external financing will be an essential piece of our development for the foreseeable future, and this is not without precedence. The East Asian miracle would not have been possible without foreign assistance. Take South Korea, for example. In the 30 years between 1946 and 1976, he received near $6 billion from the U.S. alone, a huge amount at the time with very few conditions. That allowed the country to define and pursue a homegrown vision and a strategy of its own. Today, South Korea is one of the world's leading economies. But the global landscape is shifting, and we need to shift with this. Recent policy shifts, including those of the Trump administration in the U.S. and other several European countries, have introduced uncertainties into the prevailing development aid architecture. Above all, the global financial architecture is failing to meet Africa's needs. It needs a fundamental overhaul to be fit for purpose for today. Ghana has been part of a strong coalition of countries, institutions, and advocates pushing for African priorities in the global financial system. The coalition has had some success, but we must not wait for the world to solve this problem for us. No country has developed on the back of aid alone. It is time to look inward at how to raise revenues and fund our own development so that our dependence on external finance does not continue to hold us back. Our private sector can be a key contributor as instruments such as blended finance and public-private partnerships offer great untapped potential. And remittances from the Ghana diaspora have consistently outstripped ODA and FDI flows for many years. Now, underscoring the importance in our financing mix. The upshot of all this is that Ghana needs a comprehensive financing strategy, one that effectively aligns different funding sources to our vision for economic transformation. Such a strategy should include three fundamentals. First, a Ghana Development Finance Platform that will coordinate the flow of development assistance to Ghana, including assessing the progress we are making in our policy reforms and programs, and ensuring that resources are not duplicated, wasted, or misaligned with our developmental vision. Second, a long-term agreement with our major external partners. A particular instructive example of this is the World Bank's agreement with Pakistan. The bank has committed to providing $20 billion in financial support over 10 years, a shift from the traditional short-term partnership approach used in Ghana and other countries. The basis for this longer-term approach in Pakistan is the realization that after the recent crisis, the country needs to break away from its past pattern of stop-and-go reform cycles and instead commit to a credible, more stable developmental course. Third, a comprehensive domestic revenue mobilization plan that curbs illicit financial flows, harnesses remittances, and ensure fair taxation to fuel our public service and investment in our own progress. The overall goal of this strategy will be to mobilize significant increased financing coupled with rigorous expenditure management in the next 10 years to support our development, underpinned by a strong accountability mechanism. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I hope that over the next 2 days, our discussion will focus on concrete policy reforms, institutional strengthening, the strategic investment to stabilize the economy, drive growth, and create jobs in the medium to long term. I applaud President Mahama for putting this dialogue together at a critical moment in his administration. I'm honored to have been able to contribute to the National Economic Dialogue Committee's work as one of its 8 members. And I salute you, Ishmael, for the outstanding job you have done as chairman of the committee in such a short time. Finally, let me mention Ruchi Sharma, an author, fund manager, and columnist for the Financial Times, who wrote a book in 2013 called Breakout Nations and predicted the countries that will become the next economic miracles by 2050. Not a single African country made the list. Not South Africa, not Nigeria. Therefore, my question for all of us is a simple one. What would it take for Ghana to become a breakout nation by 2050? It is my hope that this National Economic Dialogue will provide the roadmap. Thank you for your attention.
Please put your hands together for Dr. K.Y. Amoako for that comprehensive background to this very important summit. And I like the fact that you all applauded when he asked the question, will Ghana be in the list? And I think the answer is yes, if we do the right things here. Let's put your hands together for him one more time. Thank you, Doc. We really appreciate your work. We're still here live at the 2025 National Economic Dialogue, and Dr. Amoako gave us 3 strategies: visionary leadership, policy consistency, and shared responsibility between citizens and leaders, which is why we're all gathered here. There are also 3 objectives for today's program. The first is to communicate the true state of Ghana's economy to stakeholders. That is what the subject of the next presentation would be. So I'd like to now welcome the Minister of Finance and MP for Ejumaku Enyan Esiem, the Honorable, he's not the main uncle Atu, there's an older uncle Atu, but he's the brother Atu, KCL Atu Forsen, to present to us the true state of Ghana's economy. Please put your hands together. So your brother Atu, since Uncle Atu is still there. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Your Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Your Ladyship, the Chief Justice, our Chairman of the Council of State, Dr. Ishmael Yamson, the Chairman of the Organizing Committee, other members of the Organizing Committee, members of the Diplomatic Committee, and fellow countrymen and women, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's august gathering. Your presence here is a testament to your love for country and the resilience of our collective unity and purpose. This is an ample demonstration of our ability to put aside our differences when the national duty calls and bind us together in search for answers to the problems that confront us as a country. Today's gathering and the subsequent consensus that will be forged from these stimulating discussions will follow and will lend us the opportunity to be able to put together a policy that will guide all of us. This is a proof to the old saying that adwen onyinimpa kronitrim, to wit, knowledge does not reside in the head of one person. I wish to acknowledge the chairman of the organizing committee, elder statesman, Dr. Ishmael Yamson, and the distinguished members of the committee for working tirelessly to put together this important dialogue. It is with great anticipation that we embark on this first national economic dialogue in over a decade, a pivotal moment in our national history. This dialogue is not only a significant and defining moment, but it's also an important reenactment of our history when the nation assembled at a similar forum in Senchi some 10 years ago. Today, we set out to attempt to resolve economic puzzle of much greater magnitude and scale than those that confronted us some 10 years ago. This dialogue is therefore an opportunity to reflect on our economic reality, address the pressing challenges, and chart a course towards a more prosperous future for our citizens. It is my hope and prayer that the lessons that will emerge from these conversations will guide our steps and that we may not repeat the mistakes of recent past. The panel discussions, workshops, and breakout sessions have been carefully designed to confront the pressing economic challenges of our time. The resultant prescriptions and the critical policy initiatives will drive structural reforms and our transformation agenda to reset our economy and secure the prosperity of our citizens. Mr. Chairman, as we embark on this development of our medium-term plans, commencing with the forthcoming budget on March 11th, the insight, expertise, and experiences will be garnered from these deliberations will prove very invaluable assets that will shape our collective path for our future. In this time of crisis, it is very imperative that we acknowledge the significant toll that has been borne by every Ghanaian, particularly the poor, from severe currency depreciation to hyperinflation, from haircut to steep tax increases, from rising inflation, from rising fuel costs to rising electricity prices, and very increasing interest rates. Fellow countrymen and women, the economic crisis isn't over. Indeed, the full length of our current crisis is still unraveling by the day. The situation requires significant sacrifice from all of us to stem the bleeding and place our economy back on the right trajectory. I'm pleased to note that His Excellency the President has taken the lead and has given the strongest signal to our commitment to sacrifice. In furtherance to his commitment, we have streamlined and realigned the size of government, evidenced by the reduction of ministers of state to 60 from the initial 123 and later to 88 ministers. We have followed. This we have also followed with significant budget cuts that will be announced soon for the Office of the President and further prohibition of the first-class travels by all government officials. These actions represent merely the initial steps in our ongoing journey towards fiscal discipline and good governance. Mr. Chairman, let me seize this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to the organized labor and the Ghana Employers Association for their understanding and collaboration in search of an agreement concerning the minimum wage and base pay. I wish at this point to reaffirm to Labour that the NDC government, headed by His Excellency President Mahama, will commit to transparency, accountability, and good governance. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would now crave your indulgence to take you to a presentation on the state of the Ghanaian economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be taking you to only 4 chapters: the growth trajectory, the long-term trends, and the urgent need for us to reset, the fiscal challenges we face, and the opportunities to reset, and I'll make some proposal for the way forward. Your Excellency, truth be told, the causes of the 2022 macroeconomic crisis can be traced well before COVID-19 and the deterioration of global economic conditions. In fact, when these shocks struck, the Ghanaian economy was already in a very precarious state. Ghana has experienced a strong growth since 2000s, beginning 2000. Strong economic growth over the past decades placed Ghana in the top 10 fastest growing countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, reaching middle income status in the year 2011. Between the year 2008 to 2019, Ghana's economy expanded by about 6.8% per year, above regional and global averages of 4.4% and 2.7% respectively. GDP per capita doubled, averaging 3% growth per year. However, the growth was driven by oil and mining, accompanied by huge debt accumulation. Oil production began in the year 2011 and contributed steadily to economic growth, representing 5% of GDP on average. Moreover, between the year 2013 and 2019, nearly 20% of GDP growth was directly attributed to mining, in fact, gold mining. Simultaneously, the growth acceleration was sustained by increased fiscal imbalances, which fueled debt accumulation. The fiscal deficit averaged about 4% of GDP between the year 2008 and 2019, more than twice as much as in the year 2000, between 2000 and 2007. Public debt went from 20% of GDP after HIPIC in the year 2006 to 93% at the central government level in the year 2022. Although these factors led to increased vulnerabilities to the commodity prices and shocks, Ghana failed to take action. The growth, as we have seen, has not translated into structural transformation and productivity. There has been very limited progress in structural transformation, with the agriculture sector still representing 1/5 of GDP and also 1/3 of the labor force, about 33%. Manufacturing productivity remains relatively low, and higher productivity sectors in industry, such as commercial mining and construction, employing few people, the informal sector and self-employment have absorbed a large share of the labor force, even among the higher income quintiles. This is contrary to what we've seen in some advanced countries and medium-sized countries. Ghana's export basket has remained concentrated in simple products with low value addition. The economy is dominated by primary products with limited value addition, which restrict the potential for economic diversification and growth. Ghana's top 3 exports, gold, crude oil, and cocoa, accounted for 85.1% of the country's total exports in the year 2024. High productivity manufacturing is relatively small and has not exploited the opportunities that we have with ECOWAS, AGWA, EPA, and AFTA. This reliance on primary commodities highlights the need for strategic effort to diversify the economy and reduce dependency on a narrow range of products, taking advantage of global value chain. Your Excellency, unfortunately, income inequalities has progressively worsened. Inequalities across regions persist due to lack of economic convergence, disparities in service delivery, and environmental degradation. Poverty rate in Upper East, Upper West, and Northern region remains above 50%. Rapid urbanization has led to rising disparities within cities. Although urban poverty rates have dropped over the last decade, the number of urban poor has not increased at all. Poverty is more prevalent in lower elevated slums, where communities experience higher fertility, lower school attendance, very low access to sanitary services, and vulnerable to natural disaster. In the year 2024, Ghana's inequality was worse than Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and other neighboring countries, unfortunately. I'll now take you to long-term trends and the urgent need for us to reset. Your Excellency, the current growth model will not be sufficient to meet Ghana's needs and aspirations if nothing is done. And it will mean that we have to take urgent steps to correct this trend. Ghana needs to take advantage of its demographic dividend. With 500,000 young people joining the labor force each year, 500,000. Within the current growth model, growth will reduce to only 3.8%, which represents 2.4% GDP per capita in less than 15 years from now. There's an urgent need to implement ambitious reforms to reset the economy in the next 4 years. Otherwise, we'll go down in terms of growth. Transforming Ghana's economic growth from one based on factor accumulation and natural resource depletion to one driven by productivity and human capital is very critical. Economic growth can be sustained over 6.5% of GDP, fully offsetting headwinds from demographic trends and the decline in natural resource depletion if we are to adjust from the current baseline situation. Your Excellency, the graph on the left-hand side shows the baseline situation from now to the year 2050 using the baseline and where the growth will be. We've adjusted for moderate reforms and we have also adjusted for ambitious reforms. The moderate reforms will largely mean that we will have to quickly bring on stream the Pecan field, and that will adjust from where we are and improve the growth trend. Whereas ambitious reforms will mean we'll have to do a lot more than adjusting from the Pecan oil fields. Without comprehensive reforms, unfortunately, Ghana will only achieve upper middle income status after the year 2050. And we cannot wait till the year 2050 before we become an upper middle income country. There's an urgent need for comprehensive policies and institutional reforms that enhance productivity, improve the quality of infrastructures, services, and elevate human capital and workforce skills. These reforms have the potential of transforming Ghana within a generation, tripling its per capita income by the year 2050. There is the need to reorient fiscal policy to support the growth and structural transformation. Your Excellency, again, the graph at the left-hand side shows the baseline and the moderate reforms and ambitious reforms. Unfortunately, looking at where we are going, if nothing is done, Ghana will only become an upper middle income country in the year 2050. With moderate reforms, we'll be able to become an upper middle income country in the year 2042. But if we are to do well and introduce very ambitious reforms, Ghana will indeed become an upper middle income country before the year 2038. And we have no choice we will have to introduce measures to reset our economy. There's an urgent need for economic transformation to reset Ghana, and we have 7 chapters to reset our economy. Chapter 1 is resetting the economy and creating prosperity for all. Chapter 2 is jobs for all. Chapter 3 is Ghana's framework for industrial revitalization, support and transformation. We call it the Ghana First. The 4th one will be powering growth through infrastructure development. 5, investing in people for inclusive growth. 6, restoring good governance and combating corruption. And 7, deepening international relations and foreign policy so that Ghana can benefit from economic diplomacy. Your Excellency, we face fiscal challenges, and indeed there are opportunities to support this reset. First, I will take you through public expenditure, otherwise called public spending. The fiscal space, as we speak, is constrained by high interest rates, high energy subsidies, and mounting rigidities. Government expenditure grew faster than GDP over the past 8 years. Non-discretionary spending severely limited the fiscal space due to high wage bill, high energy subsidy, ballooning interest payment, spending indiscipline, and weak expenditure controls, including commitment. These categories of non-discretionary expenditures, namely public sector wages, interest payment, earmark funds, account for about 70% of Ghana's total expenditure. All these expenses crowd out expenditure for capital purposes, capital expenditure. Social spending has been very low and is often misused. The National Health Insurance Scheme faces financing shortfalls and also misuse of resources. So the problem with national health insurance is not only with the financing shortfalls, but also with misuse of resources. Financing shortfalls for national health insurance. The national health insurance no longer receives its full national health insurance levy as approved by law due to the Capping Act. Additionally, resources increasingly diverted towards non-core activities, and this hinders efficiency. Today, less than 60% of the national health insurance budget goes to non-claim payment. And you could see that in the year 2008, from the graph, we used to use 86% of the national health insurance budget for the purposes of claim payment. This has reduced to about 58%. In fact, in the year 2022, it went down to about 50%. Public spending also on education is inefficient and skewed towards secondary and tertiary levels. Only about 1/4 of government education spending goes to pre-primary and primary levels. Most funds go to staff compensation, leaving little for classroom materials and infrastructure improvement. And you could see how our education budget is skewed, also from the graph from the right-hand side. Your Excellency, infrastructure spending, again, is highly inefficient and mostly uncompleted. Even a small improvement in spending efficiency could lead to significant progress in infrastructure quality. For example, an increase in efficiency to match best performing emerging markets would deliver about 20% improvement in the quality of Ghana's road. Spreading resources on too many projects without completion has become the problem of Ghana. For example, Agenda 111, where $400 million have been spent in the last 4 years without a single hospital in operation, with about $1.5 billion needed for completion. The amount spent of $400 million could have completed a minimum of 22 district hospitals instead of spreading yourself too thin. Maintenance is indeed cheaper than new infrastructure, but funds to road maintenance is also inadequate and often misused. Another example is only 41% of our primary roads were in good shape in the year 2021. Funds for road maintenance cover only 45% of maintenance needs. And this 45% of funds that has been allocated for road maintenance are often used for development instead of maintenance. And so you could see that most of our roads are deteriorating. Your Excellency, the energy sector in Ghana has become a ticking time bomb, costing about 2% of GDP every year. Every year. The objectives of the energy sector recovery program are completely off track. Fixing the sectors require radical measures. High generational costs due to lack of competition and limited renewable capacity in the energy mix is a problem. High distribution and collection losses at ECG. High distribution and collection losses at ECG is also a problem. Currently, only 62% of total energy purchased by ECG is collected. And even out of this 62%, 65% of that amount is used to pay for supplies through the cash water fall mechanism. Unfortunately, 35% of ECG's revenue is used to take care of ECG themselves over things that they don't actually require. Non-cost reflective tariffs. About 50% of cost of service provision is a matter for us to discuss. However, I still maintain that tariffs should not be used to reward ECG's inefficiencies and other inefficiencies in the system. Unpaid legacy arrests at end of year 2022 was $1.3 billion. Annual cumulative sector shortfall in 2024 stood at $2.2 billion, despite government transfer of $2.1 billion in the year 2023 and 2024. Projected cumulative financial shortfalls for energy sector is over $9 billion by the year 2026. And this is without any intervention, and if we assume business as usual. This simply means we have to take action, and the action must be now. Your Excellency, the cocoa sector also poses a significant fiscal risk. Declining cocoa production with record high prices. Cocoa production has dropped nearly 50% over the past 3 years. The 2023-2024 crop season, Cocoa Board was not able to supply 330,000 tons of cocoa contracts. Existing forward sales contracts locked in lower prices than current market rates. Revenue losses of $840 million for both Cocoa Board and the Ghanaian farmer as a result of what is happening at Ghana Cocoa Board. Additionally, about $500 million losses for rollover contract was achieved in the last year. The market prices and differentials is what aids smuggling. Large gap between market price and farmers' payment encouraged smuggling and threatened long-term sustainability. This implies that for every ton of cocoa delivered this year, in fulfillment of the rollover contract, Ghana Cocoa Board and the Ghanaian farmer would lose $4,000 per ton in revenue. No wonder we are unable to offer the cocoa farmer the right price, because every ton delivered because of the rollover contracts, $4,000 has been lost. And so the government is unable to offer enough for the cocoa farmer. And this is what is actually leading to the smuggling of cocoa beans to our neighboring countries, Togo and Ivory Coast. Cocoa Board's extra budgetary spending is also a major fiscal risk. Total debt at the Ghana Cocoa Board is $32.5 billion, of which 9.7 billion is due to be paid at the end of September 2025, this year. Outstanding cocoa road contracts reached 21 billion, in fact, $1.3 billion in the year 2024, of which only 4.4 billion accounted for in cocoa board financial statement. Supplier arrests is difficult to quantify because of lack of transparency and has become a major concern to industries. Excellency, the elephant in the room. SOEs and joint ventures company showing mounting operational and financial risk. Almost all state-owned enterprises are in the red. Almost all of them are in the red. From the Electricity Company of Ghana to the Agricultural Development Bank. Almost all of them are in the red. In fact, beginning from the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, you will see that Cocoa Board posed some profit of 2.2 billion in the year 2023. But Your Excellency, this is artificial profit. This profit is because they failed to service their debt because of the debt suspension. And so all the cocoa bills that were due at the time, they failed to pay because of debt suspension. Subsequently, this debt still exists, and so we will need to take action to restructure most of the state-owned enterprises. Fiscal challenges and opportunity to support, and the need for us to talk about revenue now. We can't develop if we fail to generate resources internally. Your Excellency, Ghana has not performed well in revenue mobilization compared to its peers. Ghana's domestic revenue mobilization has stagnated in the last decade and remained below our peers. Ghana collected 13.5% of GDP in revenue, tax revenue. Collection from other major taxes remain low, especially value-added tax, as compared to our peers. Numerous exemptions and complexity of tax system have a detrimental impact on revenue. Tax administration challenges also contribute to compliance gap. And I have two different graphs, the one on total tax revenue and the one we need to take action, the value-added tax. You could see the long line, the yellow line, dotted line, and the dotted red, representing where Ghana is and where our peers are. When you look at the other one, the value-added tax, where Ghana is and where our peers are, clearly shows that Ghana is lagging behind in the collection of tax revenue and, most significantly, value-added tax. This will mean we need urgent reforms to rationalize our value-added tax regime. Currently, it has been distorted, and as a result, there is very little compliance. The VAT gap is huge. Last year, GRA programmed to increase the VAT effort by 32%. Unfortunately, they ended up doing 17%, clearly below inflation, and that should tell you that there is a significant problem. The fiscal cost of tax exemption calls for rationalization, whilst mitigating the impact on the poor. The Tax Exemption Act in the year 2022 set out clear criteria and guidance, but other legislations introduce further tax incentives that deviate from the national tax benchmark. Tax exemptions from VAT, PIT, and import duties are estimated to generate a loss of about 3.9% of GDP. This amount does not include corporate income tax exemptions. While this exemption often offers some relief, they are costly, in fact, very costly, and they create leakages, complexity, and distortions in the tax system. The largest source in VAT foregone revenue is the VAT exemption on supply of dwellings and land, representing 33% of our overall cost. But to be fair, VAT on dwellings, VAT on real estate was introduced in the year 2023 by the previous administration. Unfortunately, getting to the year 2024 during the elections, they decided to abandon it because of elections. Your Excellency, the truth is that the tax exists, but it was abandoned ahead of the election. And that alone will mean we will have to close the gap immediately. Ghana was not sufficiently capitalized. Your Excellency, this point is extremely important. Ghana has not sufficiently capitalized on its extractive sector to generate revenue to support development and diversification. We struggle to leverage on our natural wealth, capturing its rent and channeling it towards productivity, infrastructure, and human capital. Natural resource rent simply means the difference between revenue of a commodity and the cost of producing that very commodity. Currently, the rent is 14% of Ghana's GDP. Unfortunately, fiscal revenue from extractive industries are around 1.5% of GDP because we fail to fully capture the economic rent from our natural resources. Simple put, whilst extractive industry is enjoying a rent of 14%, Ghana has not been able to take advantage of the rent. All what I want to say is that, can we take advantage and take 1% of the 14% rent as a country to support our development in infrastructure and also human capital? Fiscal challenges and opportunities, Your Excellency, with their other considerations outside taxes, expenditures, and financing. And the other considerations are institutional reforms and corresponding policy directions that will need to guide us. The fiscal rule. The Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018 failed to contain debt accumulation, the very reason why we set up the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Lack of enforcement and credibility issues, limited counter-cyclical flexibility in the law were the problems. SOE reforms are urgently required. Poorly performed SOEs in energy and agriculture sectors burden public finances. Growing fiscal risk from contingent liability and quasi-fiscal operations that we need to address. And to be straight, the non-performing SOEs in energy, I'm referring to ECG. A non-performing SOE in agriculture, I'm referring to Ghana Cocoa Board. Your Excellency, the PFM and procurement systems urgently need to be upgraded in order for us to achieve a long-term fiscal discipline, because currently they are becoming quite outmoded, and there's the need for us to restore it. Broader macroeconomic framework. Containing high inflation and stabilizing the cedi is key for fiscal action and growth. Inflation remains stubborn, around 23% since May 2024. Climate issues such as drought in key agriculture areas and delayed rainfall have harmed production, while supply chain challenges have further impacted on food costs. High inflation reduces cost of living and worsens food insecurity, particularly for the most vulnerable. Tight monetary policy stance is essential to control inflationary limits, reduce risk premium, and improve credit to private sector, and encourage an exchange rate stability is essential to contain the debt service and pass-through of import prices. Your Excellency, the recent reduction in T-bills alone is saving Ghana about $1 billion, 1 billion Ghana cedis. And that 1 billion Ghana cedis can be channeled to critical areas of the economy. And clearly, we need to take steps to reduce the borrowing and also reduce the cost of borrowing so that we'll be able to channel the dividend to support our national development. I now move to the way forward and conclude. Fiscal policy in the past 8 years has been very ineffective. As a result, the macroeconomic situation remains very fragile. it is imperative that we build a momentum for reforms. The quality of adjustment will be key to support growth and protect the poor and most vulnerable. Your Excellency, we have 7 focus areas: enhancing domestic revenue mobilization, balancing equity, simplicity, and efficiency, pursuing a quantitative fiscal consolidation, ring-fencing growth, enhancing spending, and social spending is the second focus item. The third is ensuring compliance with public financial management and public procurement laws, implementing robust commitment control to maximize value for money and ensure fiscal discipline. The fourth is to enhance the efficiency of public spending in social programs and public infrastructure. The fifth is phasing out costly, regressive, and ineffective subsidies in the energy sector, whilst increasing targeted social programs. The sixth is reforming state-owned enterprises that create contingent liability and quasi-fiscal spending. Example is Ghana Cocoa Board and the almighty Electricity Company of Ghana. Your Excellency, strengthening Ghana's fiscal framework by redesigning the fiscal rule, strengthening automatic stabilizers, while containing budget rigidities and revenue earmarking is the seventh one. And to conclude, Mr. President, fellow citizens, we can reset our economy. We can do this. We just have to be disciplined and understand that the short-term benefits we gain today has a long-term consequences on our future. Let's do this for Mother Ghana. Thank you, Excellency.
Good day. A nation of strength, a nation of pride, a nation of freedom and justice. Ghana, 68 years strong and still rising. This Independence Day, we reflect on our journey, review our progress, and reset for the Ghana we want. A brighter future is within reach by embracing our diversity, nurturing our talents, and working together in unity. We can build a prosperous nation. Let's celebrate with the theme, Reflect, Review, Reset. Key events will include 28th February Crossroads shooting incident, 5th March Presidential Awards for school children, and 6th March Commemorative Guard of Honor at the Presidency. Together, let's strive to build the Ghana we want. Ghana, Aicc.
Please put your hands together one more time for the Minister of Finance. You know, it's one thing to present over 30 slides of macroeconomic data. It's entirely another thing to do it on national television with your boss, the president, the vice president, all sitting. And you are so focused, you didn't even touch the water I brought to you. Atu Forsen, put your hands together for him. Amazing. I think if there was any doubt you were ready for this job, that doubt has been dispelled. You are delivering the news, you are not even smiling. Very powerful. But there's hope at the end of the tunnel because the president will be joining us shortly on stage to now articulate his vision for economic transformation, which is an imperative. The foundation has been laid. It's very clear the president's vision will be key to take us where we have to get to. But before we do that, we're going to invite the National Dance Company of the National Theatre to help us relax a bit before we hear from His Excellency. Let's put our hands together for them. Thank you.
progress. Today, we celebrate a momentous occasion in our nation's history as we welcome the newly elected president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. True nation builder, committed to forging a brighter future for all Ghanaians. John Mahama embodies the pillars of leadership that our nation craves: trustworthiness, reliability, modesty, and above all, truthfulness. From the moment he stepped into the political arena, John Mahama has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the people of Ghana. His approachable demeanor, paired with his genuine concern for the needs of the Ghanaian, has earned him their trust. A trust that is pivotal for any leader aiming to guide a nation through challenging times.
What I really like about JDM is his humility. The man is simply so down to earth, it's unbelievable. He's so humble, it's unbelievable. I really like that about him.
John Mahama osronyame, odonyame, osronyame, openi pasem, okita kumapa. Mihuna se mehu me abema. Oye obi nso a onyiyi nipam. We akwala o, we openi o, we pepeni o, we twini o, we bia tribe bia o fibia John Mahama tawase. On kase we nye twini, we nye we ni. John Mahama nse nipam.
President Mahama is practical. He communicates his issues very, very well. And he understands the Ghanaian politics very well. He understands the Ghanaian people very well. And that is what I like about him.
The brand, John Dramani Mahama, is not just a name. It represents resilience, strength, progress, and empathy.
I believe John Dramani Mahama is loved by many. His personality is so unmatched, and I've heard so much about how he has helped people in their difficult times, even when he wasn't yet a president. His love for God is so admirable, and his love for kids and the youth is so much amazing. And I'm not so surprised my kids get so much excited anytime he shows up on the screen.
I admire his tolerance. In 2016, a lot of people attacked his person. No one got arrested, no one disappeared. He just allowed time to judge, and here we are. That's a good leader.
Mahama's previous tenure as president distinguished him as the infrastructure king. His visionary leadership facilitated projects that have transformed our communities. Roads, schools, and healthcare facilities were built and improved. The energy sector received a big boost with excess megawatts of power, laying the groundwork for sustainable development. But the journey is far from over. Mahama has made a solemn promise to reset Ghana's economy, enabling a collective resurgence toward building the Ghana we truly want. A Ghana of opportunity, prosperity, and accountability. Through his promise of a 24-hour economy, he envisions a nation where jobs are abundant and where people thrive. Picture this: a Ghana where industry operates around the clock, entrepreneurship flourishes, and every citizen has the chance to contribute to and benefit from economic growth. Mahama's roadmap prioritizes creating jobs and ensuring that the nation's wealth is shared across all communities. A true embodiment of economic empowerment. Mahama recognizes that Ghana's strength lies in its people's strength. By fostering an environment of innovation and collaboration, he calls upon entrepreneurs and the youth to embrace their roles as the driving force behind our nation's future. Our strength as a people lies in our diversity. Mahama is dedicated to building a government that upholds accountability and transparency, ensuring ensuring every voice is heard and every concern addressed. He invites all Ghanaians on this transformative journey, confident that together we can build a Ghana that not only meets the needs of today, but inspires future generations. As we honor John Dramani Mahama and his new dawn of leadership, we look ahead with hearts full of hope, aligning with his vision for us all. Together, let us embrace this new chapter of leadership, transformation, and growth, forging the path toward a prosperous Ghana for all. Congratulations to the fourth and now the sixth President of the Fourth Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. The journey begins now.
Shall we now rise and on behalf of the chairman of the dialogue, respectfully invite the conference convener, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, for the keynote address. Please put your hands together for Mr. President.
Thank you. Kindly be seated. I was happy when that documentary ended. You can imagine how uncomfortable I was watching myself. But thank you all. Your Excellency, Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman, Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Her Ladyship Gertrude Esaba Saki-Tokonu, Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, the Right Honorable Edward Do Ajaho, Chairman of the Council of State, members of the Council of State, the Honorable Chief of Staff Julius Debra, the Honorable Minister for Finance Dr. Kaisel Ato Forson, Ministers and Deputy Ministers of State, Dr. Ishmael Yamson, and I call him Uncle Yamson, Chairman of the National Economic Dialogue Planning Committee, the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Pandit Isiama, former governors of the Bank of Ghana, heads of security services, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, His Royal Majesty King Takiteku Churu II, the Gamanche, heads of political parties, captains of industry, chiefs and queen mothers, friends from the media, fellow countrymen, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor and a deep sense of responsibility that I welcome you to this National Economic Dialogue. This gathering is more than just a symbolic exercise or the fulfillment of a campaign promise. It is a decisive step in our collective responsibility to reset Ghana's economy, restore confidence, and build the prosperous future we all envision. Today we are here to begin the process of engaging in honest, solution-driven discussions about the challenges we face and the opportunities before us. Our nation stands at a pivotal moment, and the choices we make now will determine the trajectory of our economy for generations to come. As President, I have the honor of leading the conversation on the theme, Resetting Ghana, Building the Economy We Want Together. This theme reflects our shared commitment to creating an economy that is resilient, inclusive, and built on sustainable growth. It is an invitation to all stakeholders to contribute their expertise, ideas, and dedication to this national effort. Ghana is at a critical crossroads in its economic development. The challenges before us are stark, and the economic distress we face are undeniable. However, our collective resilience, ingenuity, and determination have always been the driving force of our nation's progress. We are not here merely to recount our struggles, nor are we here to resign ourselves to economic stagnation. We are here to seek solutions, to adopt strategies that will put us on a sustainable path, growth trajectory, and to ensure that we build an economy that works for every Ghanaian. For me, this is not just another policy discussion. It is an urgent call to action. A crucial moment for us as stakeholders to unite with purpose and resolve the challenges that face us. We've gathered here to create a powerful platform where government officials, policymakers, business leaders, economists, industry experts, development partners, and other key figures come together to shape the future of our nation. The insights, diverse perspectives, and actionable recommendations that emerge from these discussions must transcend theoretical frameworks and drive real, impactful decisions that will guide our national economy forward. Throughout our engagement, we will focus on practical strategies to restore macroeconomic stability and pave the way for long-term economic transformation. This includes developing policies that stimulate growth and create sustainable job opportunities for our rapidly growing population. We'll also examine the structural reforms that are necessary to unleash the private sector's potential and make it truly the engine of growth that drives job creation and innovation. Strengthening economic governance institutions will be a key topic of discussion, ensuring transparency and accountability at all levels of government, while taking decisive action to combat corruption and other things that hinder our progress. It is vital that as we move towards a more prosperous future, and that the economic gains we achieve are distributed equitably, leaving no one behind and fostering inclusive growth that benefits every sector of society, from the most marginalized communities to the industrial leaders of tomorrow. This dialogue is a defining moment, and our decisions must set the course for a more resilient, prosperous, and equitable economy for generations to come. When I assumed office barely 2 months ago, I inherited an economy that was in a state of deep crisis. One that was weighted down by numerous challenges. The economy was reeling from unprecedented levels of debt, soaring inflation, high unemployment, declining levels of foreign direct investment, and low business confidence. The financial struggles that our nation is facing have not arisen overnight. They have been the result of several years of financial mismanagement, irresponsible borrowing, reckless spending, and weak leadership that failed to address the underlying structural issues within our economy. This pervasive mismanagement culminated in Ghana's default on its debt obligations. This marked a devastating milestone for our dear country, spawning a cascade of economic problems that have severely impacted our people. Huge fiscal deficits, excessive government expenditures, and overall financial imprudence have compromised our economic resilience. Credible rating agencies such as Moody's, Fitch, Standard & Poor have all downgraded our international credit rating consecutively, leading to capital flight and a loss of investor confidence and trust. The Bank of Ghana, instead of serving as an independent monetary authority, became a financing tool for government's excesses, fueling inflation and devaluing our currency. The cost of living has skyrocketed to unbearable levels, leaving families grappling with the inability to afford even the most basic necessities. At the same time, inflation erodes the value of wages and savings, pushing many into a cycle of poverty. Meanwhile, the ill-considered collapse of indigenous banks significantly reduced indigenous presence in Ghana's financial and banking space and led to massive job losses. For too long, Ghana has been plagued by short-term decision-making that prioritizes political expediency over long-term stability. We refuse to accept this as Ghana's reality. We reject the notion that economic hardship must be our norm. We refuse to surrender to the forces of stagnation and decline. We are gathered here today because we believe in Ghana's ability to rise again. We are gathered here to reclaim our country's economic strength and emerge as a beacon of progress on the African continent. Not only a beacon of democracy, but a beacon of economic prosperity. This dialogue here today must serve as that turning point, a forum where we move beyond diagnosing the problems and instead implement concrete, pragmatic solutions to reposition Ghana on a path of sustainable growth. As President, I am committed to ensuring that the lessons learned from this crisis will shape the decisions we make in the years ahead. The mistakes of the past must not define our future, and I vow to do everything in my power to steer this nation towards a brighter and more prosperous path. My fellow citizens, I know that the road to economic recovery will be challenging, but we must not relent in our quest to rebuild the Ghana we all want for the sake of our children and our children's children. We owe it to ourselves, our children, and our country to rebuild an economy that is resilient, that is sustainable, and capable of delivering real opportunities for every citizen. My priority as President is to restore macroeconomic stability. We must enforce responsible public financial management and ensure fiscal discipline at all levels of government while working to reduce hardships for our people. Under my leadership, the Bank of Ghana's independence will be safeguarded to implement prudent monetary policies that curb inflation, that stabilize our currency, and rebuild our foreign reserves. We must never again allow reckless borrowing and excessive government spending to undermine our progress. Fiscal responsibility must become the bedrock of our national development strategy, and every cedi spent must deliver tangible value to the Ghanaian people. We must review our laws. Thank you. We must review our laws to eliminate excessive waste in the procurement of government supplies and projects. Single-source procurement must be the rare exception rather than the norm. We must also subject government projects above a certain threshold to value for money audits. And just this morning, I was reviewing some of the procurement reports. And there was this procurement for poultry farmers, 10,000 units of something. And it was single source. The reason for single source was urgency. And one company was giving the contract to supply 10,000 units of whatever it was. The supplier and the person who assembles it was not allowed to bid. And so the company that won it went to the supplier, bought the items for 4,500 and came and sold them for 6,600 to government and walked away with 21 million cedis on that supply. I mean, how can you do this? I mean, it was our own company we're running. How would we do a thing like this? But that is government bleeding. Everybody cutting their pound of flesh. That must stop. Beyond stabilization, we must undertake a fundamental transformation of our economic structure. Ghana's economy has been heavily reliant on the export of raw materials, such as gold, cocoa, and crude oil, leaving us vulnerable to global price fluctuations and external shocks. We must end this dependence. It is time to transition to a value-added industrialized economy that creates jobs, that boosts exports, and reduces our reliance on imports. Manufacturing and agro-processing must be expanded to ensure that we derive maximum value from our natural resources. Just recently, I think yesterday, a former Chief Justice of this country asked for a review of agreements governing our extractive industry. She describes the current agreements as coming from the Guggisberg era. I agree with her. There must be increased indigenous participation in the exploitation of our natural resources. Ghana must earn more from its natural resource endowment if we are to create wealth and prosperity for our people. My fellow citizens, agriculture is a vital sector of our economy that must be modernized through mechanization, improved irrigation, and the adoption of technology-driven innovations to enhance productivity and ensure food security. We must also harness the power of technology to bridge the digital divide, ensuring that every Ghanaian, no matter their location or background, has access to the opportunities that the digital economy provides. High-speed internet and robust digital infrastructure are no longer luxuries. They are necessities that fuel economic growth and global competitiveness. My fellow citizens, all this must be underpinned by urgent governance reforms that promote transparency and hold leadership accountable to the people in whom sovereignty resides. The policies required to bring our economy back on track and sustain the gains made will require multi-stakeholder buy-in. Short-term convenience, which has informed economic decision-making in the past, must give way to long-term and medium and long-term strategic planning, which will help us to avoid the cyclical economic booms and busts that have wreaked havoc on our people. My fellow citizens, I have the political will to see through such reforms, but these reforms must be the product of our collective thinking and synthesization of well-considered proposals from stakeholders in the Ghanaian economy, and that is why we are here this morning. As I had cause to say when I delivered the message on the state of the nation to Parliament last week, consensus building and consultation will be the hallmark of this administration, because I believe that all of us as Ghanaians have a role to play in the development of our dear nation. And I would very much like to be remembered as the president who provided the platform for this to happen. My fellow Ghanaians, a new era is upon us, an era of bold transformation, economic expansion, and limitless opportunities. At the heart of our vision for Ghana's future is the implementation of a 24-hour economy that works for all. This strategy will revolutionize our economic landscape. It will create sustainable jobs and position Ghana as a competitive force on the global stage. Across the world, thriving economies have embraced continuous productivity, ensuring that businesses, industries, and essential services operate around the clock to maximize growth and prosperity. It is time for Ghana to also step forward and break free from the limitations of a traditional economy and embrace a future where opportunity is not confined by time. Under this initiative, this administration is committed to providing incentives and tax breaks for manufacturers and businesses that extend their operational hours, encouraging a shift-based employment system that expands job opportunities. We will strengthen key sectors such as manufacturing, retail, healthcare, logistics, and financial services to support such continuous operation. We will invest in infrastructure, energy, and security to ensure businesses and workers operate in a safe and efficient environment. We will enhance transportation systems to facilitate the movement of workers and goods at all hours of the day and night. We will implement fair labor practices that protect workers' rights while fostering productivity and economic growth. The time for transformation is now. Let us embrace our economic transformation and unlock the full potential of our beloved country. Let us work together to build a resilient, competitive, and a prosperous Ghana. I fully understand that the road ahead will not be easy, but it is a road we must travel. The responsibility for rebuilding Ghana's economy does not rest on government's shoulders alone. It is a shared responsibility that requires the active participation of every Ghanaian. Let us rise to the occasion, take decisive and necessary action, and ensure that we leave behind a legacy of economic resilience, stability, and prosperity for future generations. Let me take this opportunity to thank Uncle Ishmael Yamson and the National Economic Dialogue team for the hard work you have put in bringing us here together for this all-important event. I wish to thank all of you who have taken the opportunity to be here with us this morning for your commitment to this national dialogue and for your dedication to the progress of our nation. Together, we'll build the Ghana we want and a robust economy of our own design and creation. I therefore have the honor and privilege to declare this National Economic Dialogue 2025 duly open.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, the time for transformation is now, and Ghana will rise again when we all work to make it so. You may kindly resume your seats. Thank you so very much, Your Excellency, for your genuine commitment to leading this new chapter in our history. We're almost at the end of our opening ceremony. We'll take a few pictures now, so I'm going to have to invite Your Excellency back just to the base of the stairs, together with the Vice President, the Finance Minister, and then I'll mention the groups to come and join you. So, Your Excellency, please. The Planning Committee members will be the first to take a group photo.
Thank you for sticking and staying with us. We've been bringing you the live coverage of the launch of the National Economic Dialogue 2025, and it's been duly launched by the President at the Conference Center just this morning through to this afternoon. And a few highlights whilst they take their pictures will be after the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasela Toforson, spoke. The President took the stage and has been bringing us the fact that Ghana is at a crossroad with the economic development, and also mentioned that the dialogue is not just fulfilling a campaign promise, but his dedication and commitment to resetting this country as well, and has been assuring us that he will ensure accountability and transparency at all levels as well. And this dialogue, he says, is going to be a defining moment for the country, as he would want to be remembered as a president that gave the opportunity for such dialogue and also discourse. And again, he mentioned how he inherited an economy in crisis, something he already mentioned in the State of the Nation's address, which he actually also reiterated right now, but also been indicating that our cost of living really had skyrocketed, leaving Ghanaians in a bit of distress. He also mentioned that we're here to regain the country's economic strength, and it's something that you may have heard all through the speakers of this dialogue, and says that it is his duty to ensure microeconomic stability. Again, he says that a few things they're intending to do is to put behind reckless spending. I'm sure you've heard that as well, not just from him, also from the Finance Minister, and as well when he delivered the State of the Nation's address some days ago in Parliament, and also mentioned that there'll be key focusing on manufacturing and agro-processing that will also be expanding and also exported. Ghana, he said, must earn more from its resources, and also an era upon us which the President thinks that this country will be better under his watch. Also, he mentioned that his administration will focus largely on defining and consultation and very consensus building as well, and is also again been assuring us that there'll be transformation, and also calls on all of us that it is a responsibility for building the country, not just him, but all of us. Maybe I'll take you again to a few things that the finance minister, of course, is economics, and you wouldn't have the president speak only. We also had the finance minister bring us some highlights and also mention that this dialogue is pivotal to Ghana's history, exactly what the president also believes, and says the economic crisis is not yet over. Government assures labor unions of accountability and transparency. He also mentioned that there's an urgent need to reset the country or the economy, and also there's an urgent need for institutional reforms to improve productivity. Again, he mentioned how much we've been facing some fiscal challenges as well. The National Health Insurance Authority has been facing some financial challenges. He highlighted that in his speech and mentioned that unfinished projects is a drain to Ghana's finances. Funds for roads maintenance and inadequacy is also a challenge, which he highlighted in his speech. Of course, he didn't mention that without mentioning the funds that would have to be going into Cocoa Board. And there's so many other things that the finance minister mentioned. But the question now we want to ask is, where are we? And what's the future looking? We'll be talking to Kofi Ajay, my colleague. Kofi, when I see you, you're synonymous to numbers, figures, but where are we? Where are we headed?
Well, I mean, we've been getting indications from not just the president, but the finance minister who first spoke about the situation of the country's economy. And there are certain systemic, factors that can cause a shock to the Ghanaian economy. And anyone who went into that big room at the conference center today is aware. I mean, the finance minister did a perfect job by painting for us the picture now and the future ahead, looking at how SOEs will become, a big burden onto the country, spoke about ECG in particular, and then also some of the debt position. Now, we've been trying to understand this Mahama administration. We've had a dialogue, but what is the magnitude of the problem? That is what we are trying to understand today with a smart wall. So what we've done so far is to go to a certain Bible that has every verse on the Ghanaian economy, and that is the IMF report in December. It gives a perfect indication of what the economy is looking like and what it will look in the next 4 years under the president. The good news is that the IMF is projecting we could be hitting a single-digit inflation by next year, which should be around 8% plus or minus 2 by 2026. But this, for me, is the big hurdle ahead. This is the big hurdle, 709 billion Ghana cedis in terms of debt servicing for the country, looking at it between 2025 and 2028 before Mahama leaves office. This is the amount that we have to actually cough up as a country to service our debts. We are talking about interest payment and amortization, 709 billion Ghana cedis. If you break it down, you begin to understand why we needed an economic dialogue at this point. Because, I mean, a fresh government starting, and if I mind you, previous government had three sources, in fact, if you come to borrowing.
Yeah.
And that has been the backbone of the Ghanaian economy. Let's put it that way. That if you come and then you are planning your budget, you always all the time go and borrow from the external market. You borrow from the domestic market, and the domestic market was in twofold. So you either go to the treasury bills, which usually didn't used to be a big deal, it was just for short-term, shocks, and then you have the long-term, the local bonds. But after the DDEP, what we realized was that OFORI-ATTA told us something in the 2023 budget that more than 90% of the country's budget deficit was going to be financed with treasury bills. Why? Because the IMF had placed a cap on how much we could borrow from external. Okay. $250 million was the cap. We could not go beyond that. There was no domestic bonds market at that moment. And so any government that was coming to power knew that treasury bills would be key. And I'm not surprised that government actually took papers worth some 56 billion Ghana cedis in their first 7 weeks. I'm not surprised because you don't have the bond market, which would have given you big monies from the banks, big monies from insurance companies, big monies from, you know, corporate organizations and individuals. Now you need to fall on treasury bills. Looking at the trajectory, the 709 billion Ghana cedis that we spoke about, this is how it's going to spread in terms of debt servicing obligation from 2025 this year to 2028. So we are moving from 142 billion Ghana cedis this year to as high as 216 billion by the time Mahama leaves office. Now, this debt servicing comprises external. And we all know that the health of the city is really important, trying to estimate how much we'll be paying at the external level. If the city misbehave, MFA, we could go as high as even 200 billion Ghana cedis in just 2025 alone. So the hope is that the kind of assurance we've actually gotten from the first quarter, how the city behaved, you know, possibly depreciating about just 6 or 7% compared to the high figures we used to see 2 or 3 years ago. We are hoping that that will actually mitigate this. Now, this for me is the graph that paints the country's future. Now, this is 2025, and the reason why 2025 is crucial and why the economic dialogue was important is because of, you know, you see these three, let me say, boxes. Right. The blue one is our expected revenue as a country. Black one is the total debt servicing. And you have the red, that's the domestic debt servicing, right? Just look at this. You see how close debt servicing in 2025 is to Kofi, revenue. I know we'll come to the...
hold on to that for me. I want to go on Zoom and engage Mr. Peter Tekpe, who is an economist. I'm certain that you may... Doctor, forgive me. Dr. Peter Tekpe, it's not an easy feat to achieve, so forgive me. I know that you have been following the conversation from when it was launched. The president just launched the economic dialogue. I don't know, what are your takeaway homes and what should be the way forward as a country?
I think good afternoon to your cherished viewers. I think the key issue here is not the discussions at the forum, but the political will to implement what will be discussed. The reason is that this is not the first time this is being held. And the challenge is whether we actually ready to roll out policies based on a dialogue such as this, because this is a very important forum, and I think that is one of the best ways to look at the problem of the economy and own it as a people and then find solutions for it. But the challenge is whether we can really gather the political will and leadership against external forces to actually implement what we want to, and that is the key thing.
As you have mentioned, it's not just a dialogue, it goes beyond the dialogue. And for an economist, what do you envisage would be the going beyond the dialogue?
Well, it depends on what government priority areas are. Because forums such as this, you are bringing people, various stakeholders with certain level of technical expertise who you believe that have the know-how to be able to provide some solutions that will drive the economy to a sustainable path. And so if we really want to roll out what will save this economy from the situation that we are currently in now, then the expectation is that will government be able to put aside its manifesto and say that this is what we said we will do whilst we were campaigning. Unfortunately, the realities on the ground is such that we won't. So that policies that will be rolled out as political campaign programs, we will say that as a result of the interest of the nation, let's go this way. If government can do this, if His Excellency President Mahama can do this, I can assure you that he is going to be one of the best presidents that we are going to have. Because most of the time, the challenge is that manifesto promises are rolled out politically instead of rolling them out nationally. So there is a rush, there is no much thought through, and as a result, we end up burdening the economy the more. And so these are some of the takeouts that I'm expecting, that we will look at what the manifesto is saying, what they are also saying, and then let's see, will we have the political will to put aside what we said in our manifesto, and then we'll say that this is what is good for Ghana, because what we are doing is like telling Ghana that own the problem and bring out the solution and say, let's solve it. And I think one of the easiest way of solving problems is when we make the people own the challenge, and then they say, we'll go about it. And that is one of the best ways.
One of the promises in the campaign was to cut down on government spending, and that's, you have seen that they've started. It's a campaign promise, but it looks like beyond it being a campaign promise, it's still also quite impactful. One of the things that the finance minister mentioned today, which he says is the scariest one, is ECG, energy. If you listen to experts, it's almost as though even if ECG collects 100% of its revenue, we still are not able to solve the energy sector problem. Now, what I'm trying to ask really is that beyond the reality, if government is very strategic, can they really restructure this economy? This is just a reality check I want with you with an economist.
The structuring of the economy cannot be done within 4 years because there are huge infrastructure deficit and gaps. So when you talk of ECG, for instance, the problem that ECG is facing is not because of management, but people who are there don't know what to do. There need to be serious infrastructure or capital expenditure that has to reform the structures of ECG, so that we will cut down the production losses or wastage in the system. We have the situation where so many meters are in the system, for instance. And how do you collect revenue when you don't even know how many meters are in the system? This requires serious infrastructure to be put in place to be able to have data on it. How do we do that? It's by putting in funds to do this. And so if you don't put in funds to change the infrastructure that you have, the plants, look at the assets. Some of them are obsolete. If you don't do this and thinking that it's management problem, you will not solve the issue because you can put the best person at ECG, but I can bet you that the losses will still be there because what is needed is not the human capital alone, but the structures that needs to be put in place that have not been. That's why the ECG bill, ECG debt keep piling up. And so until we do this, we will not be able to solve the problem. So it's not something that can be done within 4 years, but we can look at it in phases. Then we can roll them out little by little, and we can be able to solve down with this issue.
Well, Doug, before I let you go, or maybe I'll have you hang in there. If you don't have anywhere to go, you're staying, then I want to engage Kofi a little more. I'm sure he'll bring out some data and some numbers that I'd want clarity with you from. So please stay with me if you can. But Kofi, you have heard him. I mean, the president and even the finance minister have been mentioning. It looks like you keep hearing what the problem is, which is an obvious, but the solution is a wholesale solution. And even I am a citizen, I'm quite confused as to how the way forward will be. But let us know how we can make progress.
I mean, it's important that you spoke about energy and the importance of ECG, because one thing that if it fails, the whole economy will fail is energy.
Right.
And that's why ECG is important, the cash waterfall mechanism and other players. Now, we have changed the outlook of our energy mix to one where it usually, depend on hydro now to thermal, where about 60% of our dependable capacity comes from
Kofi, give me a minute. I want to go back to where the economic dialogue happened, and my colleague George is engaging some people that also were present. Let's hear.
December, by 2016, it had kicked in. We thought there was going to be a sunset clause that says that we've cleared the sector debt. But from what presentation you saw from the finance minister and the president, you get every indication that clearly we are not out of the woods yet. There are a myriad of challenges that confronts us with the energy sector. And so we'll contribute whatever, bits of information we have towards the resetting program. It is our hope that once the government puts the spotlight on the energy sector, two, the agric, the issues that continue to remain, I don't know to call them perennial, we may be attempting to seek solutions to them. That leaking basket thing with the energy sector, we would have to, tackle it or hold it by the horn. And I'm sure that by the close of the second day, whatever discussions that, as you saw, Eli Klim is probably hosting one of the sessions. And so there should be enough space, there should be enough discussion around the bleeding that we are seeing within the energy space.
In terms of correction, how should it be done? We clearly heard from the finance minister kicking against tariff hikes because, again, you have a fund program where it could be also pushing for some realistic tariffs. How do we deal with this challenge? Because clearly his views will matter a lot on what to do with the sector.
You see, the most basic definition for finance has to do with your income or revenue and expenditure. We often look at the income generation bit, how much revenue we want to collect, but we forget about how we spend the expenditure. Just 3 days ago, you recall in the news, Northern Electricity Development Company, there's a fire outbreak in one of their warehouses. You have transformers blown. You know the cost of these items. The taxpayers' money would have to be spent, rebuying them or procuring them again. One other thing that is also baffling is how much we even procure things within the energy space. You heard Mr. President allude to one of the contracts that he was privy to. When you go out today to buy street light, the normal light, the open market will sell to you for around 450, 500 Ghana cedis. When government is procuring the same lights, you are paying 1,600. So once you have very high expenditure arising out of a leaking basket where a lot of corrupt practices would happen, no matter how much you ask Ghanaians to pay by way of tariffs, if you don't stop the bleeding or the leakage, you will simply come back to the same squares, because the more you collect, the more the wastage also arises, and then Ghanaians are told to pay more another day. Let's seal the leakages. Let's block the tons of corrupt things that we do with ECG, where we collect 63%, and then the 63% we collect, only 65 is now used to pay for power generation. If we don't stop these things, look, no matter how much you increase tariffs, you will come back to the same squares, because the bleeding and the leaking within the sector would have not stopped.
All right, thank you. So let me get the views of private sector and the former President, Association of Ghana Industries. He is also a businessman as well, and I want to get your thought from the perspective of private sector as well. Worried by the revelations here, or you think that there is hope? Some are saying that when there's supposed to be cuts, capital expenditure is going to suffer, and that has rippling impact on the private sector. Your quick thoughts on the minister's presentation on the state of the economy and the fears that capital expenditure will be the biggest cut when it comes to the restructuring or the cut that they have to undertake.
Yeah, thank you. Let me say that the National Economic Dialogue 2025 is a really strategic way of looking at the challenges of the country. At the moment, we are all aware about how businesses are suffering when it comes to scaling up and being able to expand. The challenges are many. We know them already. I mean, you're talking about high interest rates. I mean, cost of capital being very high. I mean, between 30, 40%. And also the fact that we have very short-term, borrowing. I mean, you don't get beyond 1 year. So at this moment where, as a country, we are looking at the direction of growth for the country, it is very important for us to focus on indigenous private businesses. Now, we can't have a situation where you have foreign businesses in the country, I mean, so to speak, doing well, and then we have indigenous local Ghanaian businesses virtually on their needs. What do we do so that we can reset the growth agenda of local businesses? So we are looking at some key areas as far as the dialogue is concerned. For example, medium to long-term affordable credit for private businesses. Now, secondly, we are also looking at a situation where there will be support, in various areas of the business environment. The third thing is the country being able to embark vigorously on import substitution strategies. Now, we have over 80% of all our raw materials being imported. How can you be competitive if we have unstable currency serious depreciation, and so on and so forth. So if we can really be able to ensure that most of our raw materials are produced here, definitely that will be the way to go. That's why we are very much enthused and happy about the agribusiness impetus, that this government is really pursuing, such that most of our raw materials will then be produced through the agribusiness value chain, and then it comes to the factories. So definitely, it is important that we address and then make conscious efforts to prioritize, the need of the indigenous private sector in this country.
Thank you so much. He's the he's the former chief executive of the Association of President of the Association of Ghana Industries. Let me speak to the GIPC boss, and the reason why it's very critical to engage the president or the chief executive of GIPC is foreign capital attraction. In the times when it's clear that capital is going to be a big challenge for government going forward in terms of funding infrastructure and bringing the right private capital. GIPC, what role are you going to play, or what are you going to do now that it's clear that we need targeted capital funding for critical projects because they will suffer in the expected cuts in the budget?
All right, thank you very much. I think we have taken a cue from the President's directive, which is on economic diplomacy. So our goal right now is how do we work to ensure that Ghana is open for business again with major campaigns to attract foreign direct investment into the country. And as you know, FDI is not just capital, it's not just money. It's also about equipment, and it's also about spare parts that come into the country, because when they want to work, that's what they focus on. So our goal primarily is to ensure that one, Ghana is open for business, and speak about that a lot. Two is to ensure that we expand opportunities across the regions. So what we'll be doing is that I want to map out the investment opportunities in all the regions and all the districts, so that we'll have major investment opportunities to give to investors when they come into this country. And then we've also embarked on our own institutional renewal. One, to look at our processes. So for instance, if you are an investor and you come to the center, we should be able to process your quotas for you, or process your renewal in 24 hours when all your documents are in place. Those that want to deal with us on technology transfer, how do we work with speed and accuracy in ensuring that all these are done? But it's also critical that we harmonize our efforts together with sister agencies that also promote investment. So the Minerals Commission, the Petroleum Commission, the BOG, the NIC, and all those agencies that promote FDI. So together we have one holistic message for promoting Ghana as a favorable place for FDI into the country. So that's what we'll be doing.
I mean, do you think your job is well cut out for it? Because attracting FDI in these times will be quite difficult. Just in a minute.
Well, I do understand that it will be difficult, but we do have a country that's always been attractive. So what we need to do is to just enhance our incentives, and then go back to the investors and assure them that Ghana is open for business, and we'll have them back in our country.
I appreciate your time so much, and I hope we'll be talking more time on the economy and investment attraction.
Thank you, we'll do that.
And so this is our coverage of the National Economic Dialogue, still engaging various CEOs who are gathered here, and I'll be moving soon to get the thoughts of Magdan Group Chief Executive Chairman, also to get the thoughts of the private sector in terms of the deliberations that have taken place here. Mr. Magdan is the group chairman of the Magdan Group, to get his thoughts in terms of the private sector and the expectations as well. Thank you, sir, for your time, for joining us on our coverage on the National Economic Dialogue. Being in this private sector space, what do you make of the revelations that has come up here in respect to the state of the economy and what government is promising to do about the economy?
Well, right now I'm very positive. With the revelations, I'm not really surprised. I mean, we've lived in this country for a very long time, and we know the private sector. I always talk for private sector. But what excites me now is the follow-up, like whatever had been discovered. There is a promise and a hope that it will be worked on. And they have a bit of reform. The current government, for what they have said, if that is implemented, I believe we'll see a better economy.
Chairman, there are some who have always argued in the past that the challenge has always been the political will. You get clearly from the president giving out that commitment about fiscal prudence and all those things. Does it bring some excitement to you in the private sector? Because the concern has been that when these challenges happen, it's the private sector that suffers.
Yeah, we always suffer. You know, Ghana is a very small economy. So every time government sneezes, every business catch cold. And the president in his submission, reiterated that on every word he said he's going to solve the problems. And he was very specific in whatever he said. And it's a kind of hope for the business sector.
And again, the finance minister spoke about the fact that there has to be the need for rationalizing the taxes. It could come with some strict compliance measures. Sometimes the private sector often has not been comfortable when GRA is hard on them in ensuring that everybody meets their tax obligations. Operating such a huge group, and from what your colleagues' engagement, are they worried if the GRA has to be hard on when it comes to compliance?
Well, that is, the tax basket is just a small basket. And if you look at those of us who are paying taxes, we are just a small number. And to be honest with you, I am not really worried about compliance. If they want, but they have to look at the policies, what to tax, how to tax, the revenues that are coming in. We are building businesses, and it is our job to build a very strong economy. We are the center of everything that is being discussed today. Today is actually for the private sector. So they should rather involve the private sector in their policies so that we will see a better Ghana.
Your final plea, advice, comment, encouragement, or question to the finance minister as he prepares for the 2024 budget from the perspective of the private sector?
Well, when it comes to the private sector, I always said, in our last summit, I said that in my 33 years of being in business, government policies have never worked out for the private sector. And I still stand by that government policy, many a times when the policies are set, the private sector is not included. But I believe out of this dialogue, the government will listen to the private sector more, and also our input will be taken very seriously so that we will be able, because we have to provide the jobs they are talking about, we have to pay the taxes that they are talking about, we have to do almost everything for government. So I believe that our suggestions and opinions should be respected into their policy guidelines.
Thank you, Chairman, for your thoughts in terms of private sector views and the expectations in the budget as well. This is our coverage of the 2025 National Economic Dialogue, getting various perspectives about the economy and the expectations. Let me bring in one person who played in the petroleum sector, played in the financial sector, and now he's a private man. But I knew you were not surprised, but let me just ask you again whether you were surprised about the state of the energy sector based on the report presented by the finance minister?
I think it's actually worse than it's been submitted, but maybe just by margin. But for me, no surprise at all. And what's more worrying is that, anytime you have flood in, say, your bathroom, and it's a tap that's been overrun, the first thing you have to do is cool the tap before you start trying to mop it up, right? We've not been doing that. What we try to do is take a teaspoon to try to, take out the water in the flooded bathroom. It doesn't work while the big tap is running. So it's important we have an honest conversation. We stop the tap, clean up the mess, and commit not to have an overrun anymore. So I've been here before. We had a similar thing within the petroleum downstream sector. When we had St. From there, I worked with others. We developed the ESLA concept, especially with the late former Vice President, Aicc. He was very instrumental. We came up with ESLA to try and cure and at least stop the bleed. We did that for the petroleum sector. We didn't do that for the energy sector well enough. We just ended up paying bills, spending I think, if I'm not wrong, about 45 billion cedis, and yet still we are in a huge hole in excess of 68 billion. It's not a responsible way to run things, and I think that we should all have an honest conversation. I've always maintained you don't play politics with petroleum or energy. These are market-driven stuff. You should be honest with the people about it, be more efficient, and rather look for mitigating factors to the consequences of price hikes as a result of price changes in these things. For example, look at the amount of money we have to spend. If we had spent that money rather improving our infrastructure, we're able to move trains. It will cost people less to move from point A to point B than all of us moving and sparking our car. So you can't control the price of petrol, but you may be able to control or influence the cost of transportation to your people. And you do that by investing in infrastructure. By instead of investing in infrastructure and growing your economy through prudent and effective infrastructure, you rather spend on consumption, which is not replaceable in any shape or form. Now we are saddled with that.
The finance minister has signaled his opposition to tariff hikes in terms of correcting the revenue challenge for ECG. What should be the way forward? Because he'll be critical.
You should look first. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have about over 34% losses, transmission losses. We actually have with distribution losses. We have with ECG. I'm not saying I'm using that wrongly though, because it's not that energy is really lost, but our recovery rate, as far as our bills are concerned, we have about 34% that is not really recovered. So if you can actually recover that, in effect, just do the maths. You are actually increasing revenue, as in today's revenue, by almost 60%. By almost 60%. So do you increase prices by 60% to meet what you should get today, or you get more efficient with your collections? It's wiser to get more efficient with your collection. When everybody pays, the burden on everyone becomes smaller. So I think that it's both a call on government, it's both a call on the SOE, and also a call on all of us as citizens. Let's all be responsible people. We can't save our country by trying to cheat it in our own small ways. When you cheat a unit power from the country, you're also depriving people from the opportunity to have a legitimate education, a good health, for students to get out of schools under trees. We must stop thinking that we have just stolen one small piece and that's it. We need to appeal properly to the moral conscience of the Ghanaian, while policymakers must not take responsibility and leadership in ensuring accountability within the structure. And the efficiency of the spend must also be looked at. So we have this because our policy making and our decision making has been more politics driven than commerce driven. So I hope that we can reset this part of our conversation, our management of our energy sector for sustainable growth.
Thank you so much, Senyor Hosi, for your comments on the economy, energy sector, and all that. Very soon, the finance minister has promised still to join us very soon to get his comment as well in terms of what it has to do with the issues about the economy and all the rest. But I have somebody who's played in the financial space, the accounting space, and the advisory space as well, Mr. Daniel Kojo as well, the country manager for Deloitte Ghana. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I mean, from where you sit, again, private sector, financial space as well, what do you make of the presentations, especially the bit about the finance minister on the situation now?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. So for me, from where we sit, it's refreshing to see that at least there's an attempt to tackle the problem and tackle it head on. So if you look at the way the presentation has gone from the finance minister to the president, it appears that we already know what the problems are. So we are in debt crisis. It appears that the business competitiveness, we are not on top, and businesses are closing down. We also know that in terms of revenue, internal revenue, we are also not generating enough. We also know that in terms of balance of trade, we export a lot, but not much is retained in Ghana. So when you talk about crude, if you check the records, we have balance of trade surplus. So for a country with a balance of trade surplus, we should have been okay. But what is happening is that when we export crude, when we export gold, you have very little coming back because the locals don't own those resources. So when I listen to them, I get the impression that we have a grasp of all the issues. The difficult one is how we tackle each of them. Now, so if you take each of them, for example...
And you're talking about how to tackle that. I want to quickly move you to the bit about revenue.
Yeah.
And again, there are some who disagree about whether in terms of we are still the poor in the region when it comes to our tax GDP ratio, and whether we are doing the right things.
Okay.
How should government deal with the revenue challenge in the short term? Because the funding gap has to be closed to finance expenditure. What should be the short-term measures to close that funding gap and improve on the revenue situation?
Okay. Yes, so thank you. So before I even come to the revenue, so we know we have the Fiscal Responsibility Act, where it limits our over expenditure to just about 5%. That has been codified into law. We don't comply with it. So now we need to generate revenue, internal revenue from taxes. How do you do that? It means that it's the citizenry that have to pay the taxes. Now, even people who pay taxes, they are complaining that the taxes are a lot. Now we want to now say we need more, but we can still get more. Why is it that in other countries, everybody will want to file their returns at the end of the year? Why? In Ghana, if you don't file your tax returns, no one even cares about it. My first policy, I would say, for the new government is that everyone should be able to file their return. Whether nil return, whether it's coming with any payment, let everybody file their return at a certain period. Starting point. Now, once you have that data, then you know who are filing what. There are a lot of people doing a lot of things within the country where when they file their tax return, that's the only point you know what they file against what they are spending, and then you can then trace that. So the starting point, everybody should file their tax return. Second, we now have our national ID. Yeah, which is there, fantastic. Why can't we link it? So if you haven't filed your tax return, it should be recorded on your national ID, for example. We're not saying that when you go, it will not allow you to do services, but we are saying that it should be recorded. So when, for example, I give my card and I'm doing something, it should show that I've filed my tax returns for the year. The rest of it is the hard work. How do we ensure that people disclose their incomes and their tax properly? Because people are doing a lot of things. So the revenue is very true. You need to do a lot of things, but I'm saying that there are some basic things that we have to start from. First thing, everyone will have to file their tax returns at the end of the year.
And that would help. But you see, there's also another school of thought and the argument that there's a same comment that has highlighted the revenue gap, but again is trying to press ahead with doing away with e-levy, betting tax. Some are saying that a mid-year budget will offer you a better opportunity to really assess the situation, whether really these taxes should go or not. We know the political cost and the political economy. What are your thoughts on these things?
Okay, so that's where you come into the dichotomy between politics and running the economy. So you've made promise to the citizens that you are going to remove those taxes. But the problem you have to look at is that what is that taxes contributing? I think what is happening is that people have seen that when we introduce taxes and even the taxes become outdated. For example, we have COVID tax, we have energy recovery, we have so many of those taxes. For me, if you want the people to trust you, you have to tell them, these taxes I put in for this purpose. The purpose is no more, I take it off. So that the next time you come in to tell me, okay, there's this problem, we want to introduce a tax to solve it, I will trust you. So for me, I will support the government that those taxes that have become nuisance, those ones that were introduced...
this is your space. You advise...
COVID levy, for example. Yes, you should go. Why not?
The betting tax should go?
The betting tax, you have to evaluate it. For example, how much does it generate? How much does it generate? If it's not generating enough, is there other ways by which we can generate that revenue? For me, if the aim was to prevent people from even doing betting, I'm telling you that has even cost a lot more. Now there are even fancy names that people even have for betting, for example. So we need to look at it. How much profit do the team generate, and how much taxes. So there are some of the taxes that you introduce. For example, e-levy, for example, we have to look at it. Maybe it's a tax that we need to look at it. Maybe if the percentage is high, we can look at reducing it, but maybe it's a tax.
Also, before I let you go, finally we are under a fund program. The fund program is looking at how to contain our debt situation, raise more revenue. How do we convince the fund going forward that we are committed to dealing with the revenue shortfalls by rationalizing the taxes issues? But again, in one breath, we want to again do away with some of these taxes.
Yeah. So thinking, I think that's the whole point about trust. How did we even get to the fund in the first place? You know, we have to, and that's why I said I like the whole program and the atmosphere. We want to be able to develop a homegrown solution to our problems. Now, the homegrown solution to our problems means that we generate our revenue internally. Now, when you want to do things that you cannot do, that is when you try to now go and you are borrowing, and it goes us into this situation that we find ourselves. So for me, it's about building the trust within the citizenry that this is where we all want to go. That too means that sometimes even the things that we eat, we have to ensure that we are producing them here. Before I end, let me tell you, if any politician tell you we are going to solve the problem within a year or two, I will say that politician is not telling you the truth.
Quite difficult.
Yes, you can. The correction, you need a bit of time. And when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at a 4 year to 5 years tenure. But we look at it and we can't solve all the problems. You can tell us we are solving 1, 2, 3, 4. And that 4, we work on it. And we are stopping importation of, for example, rice into Ghana. Tomatoes, we are stopping. And you can identify maybe just about 4. And then we work on it. For example, you can also decide that the oil revenue, for example, we are using it to achieve one purpose. So you and I know that the oil revenue that is coming, if it's to build railway, for example, from here to Tamale, that's the only thing. So when the railway is not done, then I know that the oil revenue that came, it wasn't used for its purpose. So there are basic things that we can do. We can't do all. So we need to try to do things, one thing after the other, and then we leave the rest, because I believe that I get a sense that the government wants to do things. For example, some of the things are cosmetics, but I can tell you they are significant. Reducing the ministers, it doesn't cut the budget too much, but it shows to people it's a signal effect.
Mr. Wosu, I appreciate your time so much. Managing partner, senior partner at accounting firm Deloitte, sharing his thought with us. And this is our coverage of the National Economic Dialogue. The finance minister, I suppose, has spoken to us live here, but we will still promise to try and bring you that interview in our earlier bulletins or deliberations when it comes to the coverage of the National Economic Dialogue. You had the president giving that strong commitment that in terms of the fiscal responsibility and showing that political will to check spending, he's going to do that. You had the finance minister also making the argument that there is a need for some structural reform when it comes to the SOEs.
Well, my colleague George Wiafi bringing us some conversations with stakeholders that were present at the dialogue, at the launch of it just this morning and through to the afternoon. But Doc, thank you so much for staying with me all this while. We were on the energy conversation, which I won't take you to. I'll take you back to one of the pointers that the finance minister mentioned, which caught my attention. It says that unfinished projects are a financial drain to the country. I'm just thinking, what should we do with the unfinished projects? As an economist, are you going to be encouraging that we continue or we put a hold on them?
That is good to hear that comment from the finance minister that unfinished project is actually a huge financial drain on the economy. And it is true. The question is that, can they really walk the talk? Because new government has come. Can they truly say that we're not going to institute a new project? Let's look at the ongoing project. That is, are we going to take catalog of all the projects that are currently ongoing and say that sector by sector, whatever we want to do, there is already project ongoing. If it is about education, We already have project ongoing. If it's about housing, we already have project ongoing. So we want to complete that. This is fantastic. And I think that this aligns with the National Development Planning Commission. Other than that, the same way Vision 2020 failed, we also have this also failed. And so the resources that is being spent in this dialogue should not go waste. Right. What needs to be done then is to set timelines.
Okay. Okay.
So that we will now have a measure, a tool to measure.
Right.
That this is what we have discussed, this is what we want to do, and this is the timeline. Then we can be able to hold government to that. Other than that, it will be another discussion just in the air.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Atekwe, for joining us today. He's an economist and has been throwing more light on the conversations that have started already. Kofi, I have just 30 seconds to go. I don't know how you can put this in like a sandwich before we run away, but of course you'll be bringing us subsequently in the bulletins more details. So wrap this up on the energy sector quickly.
Well, I mean, the energy sector is the big bedrock. And if you can see 2025, this is how much we even need to buy fuel to keep the lights on, because you have an energy sector that has about 60% IPPs. Now, we'll end with this chart from the World Bank that says that if you really want to keep the lights on, this is how much the government must cough up if you are doing business as usual. Some 4.9 billion is expected to rise to some 6.6 billion. So this is the reason why the energy sector is the main point of discussion in this whole dialogue.
Thank you, Kofi, and thank you for joining us. But do stay with us here on the JoyNews channel. We definitely will bring you details of what has happened so far at the dialogue launch today. Thank you so much. My name is Emefa Akosiadeti. For more news, do log on to myjoyonline.com.
Yebeye medical tourist destination.
Campaigns are fought hard, the citizens vote, and then a winner is declared.
I have the singular honor as the returning officer to declare His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as the winner of the 2024 presidential election.
The winner takes it all. But do politicians ever go back to the citizens to ask them what their expectations are? And do the citizens get to engage government about issues that matter to them? The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Hall strain will travel across the country, collecting and collating the expectations of citizens of their government. On the 25th of February, the train stops in Sunyani in the Bono region, OFORI-ATTA in the eastern region, and Wa in the upper west region. On the 27th of February, in Takrady in the western region, Techiman in the Bono east region as well. And then on the 3rd of March, in Accra in the Greater Accra region, and Dambai in the Oti region. And on the 4th day of March, in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, and Cape Coast in the central region. These will be followed by 4 town halls for special groups. First, the youth in Tamale in the northern region on the 11th of March. Then, for women in Ho in the Volta region on the 13th of March, followed by people living with disabilities in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 18th of March. And finally, for the aged, also in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 20th of March. Join the conversation now and share your expectations on CDD Ghana's social media platforms using the hashtag CitizenExpectationGH and also on this radio station. From the 25th of February to the 20th of March 2025, follow the 10 regional town halls train and 4 special groups town halls on this radio station and all CDD Ghana social media platforms. The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Halls is powered by the Adom and Joy brands of the Multimedia Group with generous support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office.
Download OneXBet app and enjoy the variety of sports anytime, anywhere. OneXBet app. at the heart of the game.
Yebeye medical tourist destination.
Campaigns are fought hard, the citizens vote, and then a winner is declared.
I have the singular honor as the returning officer to declare His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as the winner of the 2024 presidential election.
The winner takes it all. But do politicians ever go back to the citizens to ask them what their expectations are? And do the citizens get to engage government about issues that matter to them? The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Hall strain will travel across the country, collecting and collating the expectations of citizens of their government. On the 25th of February, the train stops in Sunyani in the Bono region, OFORI-ATTA in the eastern region, and Wa in the upper west region. On the 27th of February, in Takoradi in the western region, Techiman in the Bono east region as well. And then on the 3rd of March, in Accra in the Greater Accra region, and Dambai in the Oti region. And on the 4th day of March, in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, and Cape Coast in the central region. These will be followed by 4 town halls for special groups. First, the youth in Tamale in the northern region on the 11th of March, then for women in Ho in the Volta region on the 13th of March, followed by people living with disabilities in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 18th of March, and finally for the aged, also in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 20th of March. Join the conversation now and share your expectations on CDD Ghana's social media platforms using the hashtag CitizenExpectationGH and also on this radio station. From the 25th of February to the 20th of March 2025, follow the 10 regional town halls train and 4 special groups town halls on this radio station and all CDD Ghana social media platforms. The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Halls is powered by the Adom and Joy brands of the Multimedia Group with generous support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office.
Hi, welcome to The Marketplace. We continue our coverage of the National Economic Dialogue, taking you straight away to the Accra International Conference Center, where my colleague George Rafe is speaking with the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Anthony Sapon.
Books. And we do know that there are some of us in businesses as individuals have not been filing or complying with our tax provisions. So we're going to heighten compliance, and we believe that with compliance, we will be able to mop up the necessary revenue. But thirdly is also the idea of innovation and digitalization. In today's world, the world is moving through technology, and therefore, as tax administrators, one of the ways to bring efficiency in our work is to really embrace and fully implement technological solutions. So together again with my top management team, we are embracing the necessary technologies. One, to be at par or even ahead of the taxpayer, and to enable us to have the data and transparency so that we can really go for where we need to collect the taxes fairly and responsibly, and at the same time ensure that we meet the target that is set for us as GRA for national development.
You've spoken about target, and recently in the media interaction you talked about over 200 billion Ghana cedis. I would ask myself that in an economy where it is clear that there will be some adjustment, restructuring and cuts which will also impact on businesses' ability to perform, isn't that 200 billion quite on the high side, jumping from 145 to over 200 billion? Can you really achieve this target?
Indeed, it looks unsurmountable on the face of it. But I believe that with determination, with the right strategies and teamwork, we will be able to meet this challenge. And I say so on the grounds that, one, we do know that, as I've already mentioned,
there are several areas where our tax handles are not performing. Indeed, the minister did mention about the performance of VAT, which contributes about 17% of our domestic tax composition, compared to our peers that are running around 50%. And therefore, if we focus on VAT, we should be able to close some of the gap. Most of us do know that we go to places to buy items, and the first question we are asked is, do you want a VAT invoice or do you want the other invoice? These are areas that, as Ghanaians, as citizens, we ourselves, without the taxman, we must ensure that we are collecting VAT receipts to make sure that we contribute our quota towards domestic revenue. But from GRA's point of view, we will be rationalizing and looking at efficient ways to improve collection. The other areas also relates to high network individuals. If you look at Accra today, the number of high-rising properties that are coming up, the issue is that we have all these owners in the net. So if we combine these areas which are already existing, but we've not been able to fully tap, and we put in the right strategies and actions, we believe that we will be able to make the target that has been set for us.
And I understood that last year that also did quite some miracle for you when it comes to these high net worth individuals who were having accounts outside and all the rest. Is that true that contributed quite significantly, even with meeting your target for last year?
Indeed, it's a beginning of the journey, but we see a high potential there. So we believe that there are two components of that. This is high net worth, which are domestic, and high net worth who earns income outside the country. There's a huge potential there from the data and insight that we are receiving. And therefore, going forward is one area that we need to deepen to make sure that the individuals and businesses in that area contribute their fair contribution to tax revenue.
So before I let you go, there's one line I want to get some understanding from you. In your quest to be compliance and tax compliance and rationalization, how do we draw the line between these enforcement and ensure that businesses also are not antagonized? Because the always fear was that anytime you are heavy on compliance, GRA is ruthless. GRA is not business friendly. Drawing the line between compliance, rationalization, to ensuring that you are good with businesses when it comes to the collections. Help me with some education, because there are some businesses out there that are worried.
Thank you very much. This is a very important issue to discuss. It's so important because we need to understand that government collect taxes from businesses when they have created the profits and when businesses are growing. And therefore, as a tax administrator, our primary interest is for businesses to succeed, for businesses to grow. And when businesses grow, the relevant taxes must be paid. And therefore, from GRA's point of view, we say we want to be the first. First means that we have to be fair in our actions. We want to act with integrity, and we want to ensure that we are responsive to the issues of taxpayers. And therefore, even in the face of compliance, we have to employ the points of fairness and the points of integrity in dealing with the taxpayer. It's a partnership, and it's not a situation where one is dominating upon the other. And therefore, in looking at issues about compliance, first we'll be looking at education, continuous education of taxpayers who are already in the net, and particularly for taxpayers who are outside the net, to ensure that they are fully aware of their responsibilities and voluntarily comply with the tax provisions. Second is to forge partnership, particularly for taxpayers who are also already in the net that have issues, and to sit down and to dialogue and to resolve issues between them and us as tax administrators, so that they can focus on their business while we focus on collecting the taxes. And thirdly, to use a collaborative approach. And I think that is where sometimes we work with the other security agencies. And this, I believe, may be in the other net, where people who are fully aware of the obligations but decide not to comply with the law. And you will understand me that in that sense, we need to enforce the law and apply some minimum sanctions that will ensure that people will comply with the law in collecting revenue and for national development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sopon. I believe that you'll be kind to these businesses. So we'll be getting to the situation of Ghana, and thank you so much for your time, and we'll be coming back to you later, sir. Well, so let me come to the middle, because they have some concerns as well in terms of have the situation of Ghana Industries president here as well.
And expectation in the budget.
I'll come to you. There are concerns about compliance, which I know that industry will complain a lot, but they've given the assurance that they will be friendly to you. Or let's first start with your major concern with the tax collector chief who is here.
No, the major concern between us, the gain is mutual. So if the difficulty is compliance, deploy technology. Today, technology is the way to get everybody into the tax net, because his tax is to get more revenue. And there are many people out of the tax revenue. And therefore, it's a struggle to meet the tax, target. So broaden the revenue, broaden the base using technology. That's the way to go. So he has no excuse.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Sapon. They've complained about the VAT challenge, and I know it's a major challenge for industries, even tax before production. What do you make of their concerns coming from industries when it comes to the current VAT structure, and what is the promise for them going forward? They are here listening to you.
Yeah. So if you look at the economy of Ghana today and for most African countries, we're moving on consumption tax, and VAT actually sits on consumption. So today you ask yourself, for somebody who will not come and file their earnings, but they will consume, and therefore if they are consuming and you have VAT, you are able to bring them onto the net. So VAT is the future, and VAT is the way to go. Basically what we need to do with our VAT, and I believe that with the vision of the president as well as my sector minister, finance minister, the VAT agenda is being taken seriously. It's going to be reviewed, and when it is reviewed, it will be done through consultation with industry and all key players to make sure that we set ourselves on a path that will enable us to harness the future potential of VAT for this country.
Doctor, you make convinced by the assurance coming from the commissioner?
Well, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating, correct? So we wait for the said consultation to come. Because in the VAT, over the period has distorted all business operation. You have the threshold issues, you have about three, you have the standard, the flats, then you have the cascading effect of the baseline, and then the levies in between there. It's a whole creature that needs real reform, and that is the biggest among the 52% tax we pay at the port. That takes about 22% plus the levies. So we need a serious work, and besides that, there's a cascading effect that always distorts all our computation. So we are excited, and he's the right man to do it, because he is a taxman. He's headed the KPMG, so he has no excuse, because he understands the rudiments and the difficulties the business community that he superintended in terms of auditing over the period. So we are determined to work with him to streamline the VAT, which is the biggest one. Yes, by virtue of the informal sector, that is pretty huge. The inability to rope everybody into the tax net, the only way out is the consumption tax. And however, let's streamline it and let's deploy technology to meet compliance, and you get a revenue target that he needs.
What do you make of the concerns coming from AGI with respect to their issue with VAT? If it's fixed, they are ever prepared to meet their tax obligations to help you meet your target as well.
Indeed, what he said aligns with my understanding of the situation. He's enumerated a number of concerns around the VAT. And again, he also agrees that it's a consumption tax, which is the way to the future. And that's why we need to partner and work together.
All right, my colleague George Afe speaking with the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, also speaking with the President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Imdake there. Joining me on Zoom with more reaction to the opening of the National Economic Dialogue is Dr. Mate Anim, who is Executive Director of the Policy Initiative for Economic Development. Good afternoon to you. The President has been talking about solutions to the country's economic challenges. What do you see as the most pressing economic challenge facing Ghana right now, and how can the government and indeed the stakeholders address it effectively?
Thank you very much. Yes, any call for national dialogue or discussion, to me, is a step in the right direction, because basically we try to bring on board all critical stakeholders to have a real look at the economy and how collectively we can strategize for the way forward. So to me, it is a very progressive move. The most important thing out of this dialogue is about government willingness to run with the ideas that will pop up, will run with the recommendations from the experts. To me, that is more critical than even the event. So I think it's a very progressive and innovative move by His Excellency, the President. But the most important thing is they should be ready to run with the recommendations that will come out of this two-day event, because that is critical. And I've looked at the people involved, and I realized that it is not packed with party and political faithful. You will see a diverse, cream of portfolio in terms of expertise. And to me, that is also a very positive signal that is ready to pick some wisdom from practitioners and others from other divide. And to me, that is very progressive.
All right. Some have called this the Century Forum 2.0. I just wanted to talk to us about how crucial it is for there to be long-term fixes rather than short-term fixes, because if this government holds the economic forum, they come up with ideas, and next government takes over, then we see the whole thing about the economy and its challenges restart. I mean, discussions over and over again, and there is no long-term fix that helps successive governments follow a pattern that helps the economy.
Yeah, you are perfectly right. The challenge we have in this country has to do with we rolling out long-term plans that will bring about a sustainable growth. So if you look at all the policies outlined by successive government, the focus is the short term, try to create something that will appease the citizens just to win a political power. This time around, my view is that the thinking should be long-term perspective. Once it is done, what the sitting government or His Excellency the President ought to do, after the discussion, the recommendations and the strategies have been devised, he must go another step further. This time around, not like large numbers, bring all the political stakeholders on board, and then the National Development Planning Commission also on board, and see how we can function a long-term strategy in terms of continuity in governance, in terms of how successful government will run with a plan. If we are able to do that, it is then that it will translate a sustainable growth. If you look at our history, we roll out plans, just like you cited, the Century Consensus, where the new government took over, that local content strategy was put somewhere, and then they need to create a new thing altogether. So in terms of long-term strategy and in terms of continuity, that has been a challenge confronting our governance and mechanism, and that's the reason which it appears we are not propelling sustainable growth over the period. So my view is that after this consensus, it shouldn't just be President Mahama's government rolling out this particular program, but we should have a way of feeding same into the National Development Plan and making sure that we derived some of this strategy, the various political parties derived the strategies from the National Development Planning Commission, and then that's the way to go. If we are able to do that, then my view, respectfully, is that going forward, we should be able to have a sustained strategy that will drive sustainable growth and create opportunity for the citizens.
Right. Well, we've already seen the posture of the MPP towards this dialogue, and so, I mean, hopes of a consensus, maybe not just yet. But I want the president is focusing on resetting the economy, right? And Dr. Ishmael Yamson, when he addressed the opening today, said the president has got the wisdom to reset the economy. But I'm just wondering, where does he start building the economy from if he wants to reset?
Right. I have indicated that you don't reset the economy by starting from the scratch. Okay, we have certain things. Let me put it this way. The base is already on the ground. Let me give you an empirical example. If you want to reset the economy and focus, taking the agri sector, for example, the previous government, that is Nando's government, had a policy on the ground, planting for food and job. My view is that it was a progressive policy. It is implementation and in terms of the coordination that has been the issue. So you don't start by creating a new one. You start from that particular point and see how you can coordinate it better and how you can make more investment into that policy to make it more fruitful and beneficial for the citizens. So that's one aspect of it. So resetting Ghana's economy is not a matter of creating new policies, which has been a challenge over the period. We need to take advantage of what is on the ground and expand it further, do it better to create more opportunities for the citizens.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, deliberations have started. Hopefully, we'll have a conversation after looking at the outcome of the conversations that go on during the National Economic Dialogue. Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Amartey, Executive Director, Policy Initiative for Economic Development. I appreciate your time here on the Marketplace. We're taking a short break. When we come back, interest rates tumble to 20% on the Treasury market. What does that mean for the markets? We'll discuss after this break.
Across Ghana, homes are adorned with vibrant colors. Yet, beneath this colorful surface, a dangerous practice is spreading.
We have paints, whether imported or mixed around the corner, but not certified by the Ghana Standards Authority and therefore not approved for use.
But the bigger danger lurking around is lead-based paints sold on Ghanaian markets.
Sometimes the paints are even expired or about to be expired. They put it on us, reduced to clear.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. The chop money emergency. Emergency. Catch it. I'm in rent emergency. Now, there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life regardless.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Yebeye medical tourist destination.
Campaigns are fought hard. The citizens vote, and then a winner is declared.
I have the singular honor as the returning officer to declare His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as the winner of the 2024 presidential election.
The winner takes it all. But do politicians ever go back to the citizens to ask them what their expectations are? And do the citizens get to engage government about issues that matter to them? The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Hall strain will travel across the country, collecting and collating the expectations of citizens of their government. On the 25th of February, the train stops in Sunyani in the Bono region, OFORI-ATTA in the eastern region, and Wa in the upper west region. On the 27th of February, in Takoradi in the western region, Techiman in the Bono east region as well. And then on the 3rd of March, in Accra in the Greater Accra region, and Dambai in the Oti region. And on the 4th day of March, in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, and Cape Coast in the central region. These will be followed by 4 town halls for special groups. First, the youth in Tamale in the northern region on the 11th of March, then for women in Ho in the Volta region on the 13th of March, followed by people living with disabilities in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 18th of March, and finally for the aged, also in Accra in the Greater Accra region on the 20th of March. Join the conversation now and share your expectations on CDD Ghana's social media platforms using the hashtag CitizenExpectationGH and also on this radio station. From the 25th of February to the 20th of March 2025, follow the 10 regional town halls train and 4 special groups town halls on this radio station and all CDD Ghana social media platforms. The CDD Ghana Citizen Expectation Town Halls is powered by the Adom and Joy brands of the Multimedia Group with generous support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. The chop money emergency. Catch it. I'm in rent emergency. Now there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life we got.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
All right, welcome back to the marketplace. Before we go, let's get a quick update on the financial markets. Interest rates have tumbled to 20% as government recorded 181% oversubscription of T-bills from last Friday's auction. Joining me with an update is Head of Trading at Republic Securities, Patrick Edem Agama. Patrick, let's begin with how the auction fared last Friday.
Okay, good afternoon. On the money markets on Friday, the government raised a total of 7.4 billion Ghana cedis against a target of 6.49 billion Ghana cedis. However, bids amounting to 18.25 billion were tendered. Again, it led to the rejection of about 10.8 billion Ghana cedis. The 91-day cleared at 20.79, decreasing by 369 basis points. The 182-day cleared at 22.96%, decreasing by 243 basis points, while the 364-day cleared at 22.7%, decreasing by 460 basis points, which is one of the biggest decrease we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, interest rates tumbling to 20%. How significant is this shift for the market?
Well, it is actually driving demand up again because there is some desperation in the market. Even on the secondary market, you see that they are even trading at a relatively lower rate. For the issuer side, it's relieving government of any pressure in terms of repayment, and we are seeing this mount every week. The coming week, we are expecting even a lower target from the government. They are actually hoping to raise a total of 5.7 billion compared to the 6.4 they raised the previous week. So we expect that demand to be mounting every week.
Well, some debate ongoing right now. The finance minister, Dr. Kasu Atu-Forson, commenting on social media, attributing the drop in treasury bill raised to government's measures stabilizing the economy. Some market watchers don't agree. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's indicative of how investors perceive the economy, the confidence they have in the economy, and there are a lot of factors that play because we saw these same levels last year, but they were accepted somehow. But with the rejection coming in, it tells the market the government is not just waiting to accept everything. So we can attribute some of that confidence to the way the auctions have been treated.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick Edemagama, Head of Trading, Republic Securities. I appreciate your time on the marketplace. We'll link up soon. Well, there is more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Get there for the day's latest stories. We will be back same time tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of our programs.
Across Ghana, homes are adorned with vibrant colors. Yet, beneath this colorful surface, a dangerous practice is spreading.
We have paints, whether imported or mixed around the corner, but not certified by the Ghana Standards Authority and therefore not approved for use.
You're strong and you're tough. Syntax tank by Syntax tank. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, check your tongue and get Syntax. SINTEX. Wait, you're trusting over 25 years. We are made in Ghana water storage solution. You were green, you were blue, colors in here. Great. That's it, Yabaha, your mom free water. We have over 400 agents nationwide. Just Ghana Finance, Yebaho. Find us on social media, Syntax Ghana. Not nominate here. Say Giovanni, Syntax, I need you in this community. And it's that simple. I will be there myself. Syntax Ghana page. All right, so just like that, we're wrapping up inside Tessie. Syntax Tank!
It's better to confront misunderstandings immediately and head on to avoid more misunderstanding.
I have found out over the years that transactions don't pay.
Good leadership is about being vulnerable, being open to know that some of your ideas might not always be 100%.
You never see failure as an option, so you continue to work hard.
Normal to get to a point where you feel you're flat, you're plateauing, but don't give up because of that, because you need a new S-curve to get you to the next
Mark
stage.
your calendar and tune in every Sunday at 9 p.m. on JoyNews. Springboard your virtual university. Your personal value will shoot up.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. Mommy, chop money emergency. Emergency. Catch it. I'm your rent emergency. Now, there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life we got.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
It's better to confront misunderstandings immediately and head on to avoid more misunderstanding.
I have found out over the years that transactions don't pay.
Good leadership is about being vulnerable, being open to know that some of your ideas might not always be 100%.
You never see failure as an option, so you continue to work hard.
Normal to get to a point where you feel you're flat, you're plateauing, but don't give up because of that, because you need a new S-curve to get you to the next
Mark
stage.
your calendar and tune in every Sunday at 9 p.m. on JoyNews. Springboard your virtual university. Your personal value will shoot up.
Open and close. Open. When you build more muscle, it helps with aging disability.
Let's talk non-communicable diseases and everything health-related.
You can be fit as you think, but you might not be healthy.
Step into the consulting room where seasoned doctors and health professionals answer your questions in a relaxed and interactive environment.
How would I even know that I'm going through chronic stress?
Concentration is poor, attention is poor, memory is affected, libido is affected, your diet.
Music can cure.
Of 2016. The current account balance also ended 2024 with a surplus of 4.2% of GDP, the very few times in recent history to have a surplus current account. And such a surplus tells us of the strength of the external payments positions of the country. Throughout the history of when President Mahama was in office, and without any confluence of crisis as faced by the previous MPP government, the current account was consistently in deficit, and he ended 2016 with a deficit of 3.1% of GDP. So again, let's compare 4.2% surplus by the end of 2024 against 3.1% deficit by the end of 2016. Gross international reserves measure the resilience of the economy, particularly in times of crisis, and how prepared the country is to weather external shocks and vulnerabilities. The Bank of Ghana has, through novel innovations, accumulated high levels of reserves, the largest in our history, with $8.9 billion. This is 4 months of import cover, above the IMF's 3 months of import cover. The NDC left office in 2016 with gross international reserves of $6.2 billion, or 3.5 months of import cover. Again, 4 months of import cover versus 3.5 months of import cover. Who is better managing the economy of Ghana? Ladies and gentlemen, the true state of our nation is that economic growth has rebounded strongly. The external sector is impressive, and our resilience towards shocks and external vulnerabilities is at all-time high. This is the true state of our economy, but the president and his government has a different understanding of what a strong economy means. President Mahama again cited the headline inflation of 23.8% and the 19% rate of depreciation of the cedi for 2024 as indicators of a badly managed economy. It's important to provide context to this. Following the COVID-19 and supply shocks globally, prices of food and other essentials increased substantially. Even in the advanced countries, inflation averaged 7%, very high for countries that are used to 1% or less inflation. The causes of this rise in inflation globally were not far-fetched. For example, COVID-19 slowed down the world economy due to lockdowns and the closure of factories and offices, including major port facilities across the world. And this adversely impacted global supply chains. Also, many countries implemented fiscal stimulus to revive economic activity. However, faced with supply constraints, the increased demand resulting from the fiscal stimulus led to higher inflation. To control inflation, the central banks of many countries, led by the advanced economies, resorted to monetary tightening by increasing rates. This led to significant investment reversals from small open economies like Ghana, weakening our currency and fueling the rise in inflation. This, together with imported inflation, pushed Ghana's inflation sharply to 54% by the end of 2022. The current rate of 23%, therefore, means that
inflation was halved within a year, and we were working to bring it further down to the pre-COVID level of 8 plus or minus 2% by 2026. Whilst 23% is still high, the effort to bring it down from 54% has been significant. It must be noted that before COVID-19 struck the world, the MPP demonstrated a record in inflation management. We brought inflation down from 15.4% in 2016, handed over to us by President Mahama, to 11.8% in 2017, 9.4% in 2018, 7.9% in 2019. Inflation for 2 successive years remained a single digit, the largest period in our recent economic history. The effect of the pandemic began to be felt from 2020, when inflation rose to 10.4% in 2020, 12.6% in 2021, and then to 54% at the peak of the global economic crisis in 2022. Even laymen can understand this. How the current managers of the economy cannot understand this can only be born out of political dishonesty. The adverse circumstances the MPP administration faced were unprecedented, but such did not exist when President Mahama's government achieved headline inflation of 15.4% above the target of 10.1% in 2016. We know that there is an inverse relationship between inflation and the strength of a currency. A higher depreciation of the currency will automatically pass through to inflation in developing economies like Ghana. This means that inflation will also be higher, and the reverse also holds. Therefore, following the sharp depreciation of the cedi in 2022 by 50%, inflation was also going to rise sharply. This strong pass-through would naturally be a major challenge for the managers of the economy. By reducing the rate of depreciation to 19% in 2024, we have seen the muting of the pass-through to inflation, and these efforts cannot be glossed over. These efforts by the previous administration and the favorable results produced should be appreciated by President Mahama and improved for even better outcomes for our people. These effective efforts should not be disregarded and belittled for political reasons. As a country, we gain nothing by this kind of politics. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the rate of 6.5% depreciation we have witnessed year to date in 2025 is not informed by any sustainable strategies by the current government. The current disparity between inflation and the rate of depreciation is evidence of heavy central bank intervention on the market. The Mahama administration and the central bank can do this, but this is happening only because the previous administration left a gross international reserve of $8.9 billion by the end of 2024. This is being used to shore up the value of the cedi. The president deliberately, as you know, avoided this in his statement. Fellow Ghanaians, the true state of the nation is that exchange rate stability, which we saw before the end of 2024 and which has continued into the first quarter of this year, is not by any magic from the Mahama government. It is because the Akufo-Addo government left significant levels of international reserves for them. In addressing the issue of buffers created to support expenditure and maturing debt obligations, the president focused on the sinking fund as if it is the only source of buffers. The sinking fund is just one of our buffers. At each point in time, the government designates some accounts for buffer and for purposes of special payments. In the last 8 years, such accounts included the sinking fund, the Eurobond proceeds account, the IMF proceeds account, and the Treasury Main 2 account. For example, the IMF third review disbursement of $360 million was done on 2nd December 2024, but this was kept as buffer part of which was used to pay coupons amounting to $346 million to Eurobond holders on 3rd January 2025. This was not done from the sinking fund. Similarly, in October 2024, we paid $520 million to our Eurobond holders for the first coupons and other fees. But again, this was not done from the sinking fund. How could we have done these payments if we didn't have buffers? Yet the president thinks that the only buffers we have is the sinking fund. The MPP also left significant amount of buffers, more than 5 billion Ghana cedis from the 2024 revenue collected by GRA in the Treasury Main 2 accounts, which the new government has used. Yet the president failed to talk about it and focus only on the sinking fund. On the financial sector, ladies and gentlemen, the president again played to the gallery by stating that, and I quote, "The financial sector continues to struggle despite the previous government reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector clean-up exercise to date." Reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector. Typical of NDC's usual sweeping statements, he made this conclusion.
Can you please put that off, please? Put this off, please.
It's on completely. If you can't control it, just please, let's go back.
On the financial sector, 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector. Typical of NDC's usual sweeping statements, he made this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. On the financial sector, ladies and gentlemen, the president again played to the gallery by stating that, and I quote, "The financial sector continues to struggle despite the previous government reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector cleanup exercise to date," unquote. Typical of NDC's usual sweeping statements, he made this conclusion without providing any basis. Whilst we sympathize with those who were adversely affected by the financial sector cleanup, the exercise was well intended to protect the banking industry from collapse, protect depositors' money, and revive the economy. The evidence today shows that, notwithstanding the DDEP effects on the local banks, the financial sector has become stronger, with banks posting impressive financial ratios and returning to profitability. This is the true state of the financial sector in Ghana. The Bank of Ghana's recent publication, Summary of Economic and Financial Data, January 2025, provides very rich information about the performance of the financial sector. The annual growth in total assets of the financial sector, as at the end of 2024, was 33.8%, and total deposits by 28.8%. Similarly, in terms of liquidity, core liquid assets to short-term liabilities grew by 46.3%. The capital market shows similar strong performance, with the GSE All-Share Index year-to-date growing by 56.2% by December 2024. The earnings and profitability ratios also show that return on asset before tax recorded an annual growth of 5.4% in December 2023 and 5% in December 2024, whilst return on equity after tax grew at 34.2% in December 2023 and 30.8% in December 2024. It is no secret that the strength of an economy is also determined by the strength of its financial sector. Given the record of performance of our financial sector under the MPP administration, is this correct, ladies and gentlemen, for such an economy to be described as badly managed? Ladies and gentlemen, you can now understand that all the main components of our economy are in good shape. The real sector as demonstrated in real GDP growth, the external sector showing impressive external positions through trade and current account surpluses, and the performance of the financial sector posting impressive financial ratios. Therefore, we need to ask President Mahama, how did he come by the conclusion that the economy was mismanaged? Ladies and gentlemen, the president tried to scare the Ghanaian people about the country's debt service obligations for the next 4 years, which according to him will amount to 280 billion Ghana cedis, comprising 150 billion Ghana cedis for domestic and 130 billion Ghana cedis in external debt servicing. Government at every time provides for debt servicing obligations, and the president is aware of this. We expect the president to mobilize the funds and stop complaining, such as what every government in Ghana has done to service our debts. The MPP did that when he left us with debts in 2017. Our debt management strategy has ensured that Ghana's debt levels have decreased substantially, and so are our debt service, taking a significant burden off the government. We have ensured that through strong negotiations, the servicing of Ghana's debts owed to our official bilateral creditors, $5.4 billion, has been rescheduled until after 2026. The NDC government didn't negotiate this. The agreement we reached with the Official Creditors Committee for Ghana entails a rescheduling of all debt service, principal and interest, falling due between 20th December 2023 to 31st December 2026. As a result, no debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026. I want to repeat that. No debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026, including the debt we didn't pay in 2023, since we declared the debt standstill. This was negotiated by the MPP government, that we will not pay our debts to our official creditors until after 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, the rescheduled amounts to be paid are expected to be repaid in 16 years and in 17 years respectively after their contractual due date. We'll start servicing after 2026, but the amount we are rescheduling between 2023 and 2026, we won't pay them at all until after 16 and 17 years when their contractual due date have expired. This is the work the MPP government has done. Delays in payments will be compensated for by interest accruing on the amounts at concessional rates ranging between 1% and 3%. This offer applies to all our official bilateral creditors and ECA-backed facilities signed and disbursed before end 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, this provides briefing space for the new government. The MPP is not in government to benefit from this. It's briefing space, significant briefing space for the new government. Yet President Mahama will not talk about that. In addition, the debt service relief from this negotiation stands at $2.8 billion, which the government of Ghana would have paid, but which now stands as savings to the country. Again, President Mahama will not talk about this. Even with such a great work done by the MPP government, the president could not acknowledge it. Rather, he sought to take an earned credit for it when he stated in his